What up, guys? We are live. So we have a pretty fucking amazing debate for you today, or I guess that will be determined as the debate continues. But we got Jazmen Jaffar, who's an active OnlyFans girl, and then we got LavLune, who's an ex OnlyFans girl, and they're going to be discussing whether OnlyFans is good or bad. I believe that Lav, correct me if I'm wrong, but you think OnlyFans is bad for women and men, or just women?
I think OnlyFans is bad for women and also for society as a whole.
Okay, so Lav is taking a position like, hey, OnlyFans is bad, and Jasmine, you're going to be arguing that it's neutral or good.
Neutral to good to bad. I think it just depends on a number of variables.
Okay, cool. I am very much looking forward to this debate. We are going to go to for about an hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes. So it's going to be short and sweet. We're going to start off by giving everyone a chance to make a quick opening statement, probably a minute or two. I'm not going to be Nazi about the time, but keep it around that. And then it's just going to be purely open discussion. I'm not going to be engaging much. The only times I will step in is number one, if the conversation veers really, really off topic. Number two, someone's refusing to answer a question repeatedly. And number three, if someone's not given a chance to talk and there's like nonstop interruptions, a little bit of interrupting and spirited debate, I'm always cool with. But if it's like crazy to where the point where one person can't get a word in, then I will step in. Otherwise, you guys really won't hear from me much. I'm just going to be moderating. All right. So who should go first? You guys, any of you guys want to go first?
I don't mind either way. She can go first if she wants.
I'll go first. I'll be the man. I'll make the decision.
Go ahead.
No, but I am Leah, also known as LavLune, Leah Jane. I have a podcast called Bloodbath. I'm critical of the sexual revolution. I'm critical of sex work in general. I'm sort of moderate, liberal, and yeah, I do this stuff for fun. So here I am. And yeah, I don't, like I said, I think that OnlyFans is bad for women in a greater sense, also just for society. And by society, I mean like marriage mostly. Like I think that if we want to be in a productive society, a safe society, valuing things like, marriage and monogamy and bodies as a whole as something greater than just like a product that can be used in capitalism. I think that that's ideal for the most amount of people. Where I do think that there are outliers of like disagreeable high IQ women that can compartmentalize sex work and obviously are doing it from a position of like privilege, like being white or rich or already famous, doing OnlyFans, obviously. That's going to be a little bit different, but vastly and generally, I believe that OnlyFans is a negative.
Cool.
So,
All right, let's kick it off to Jasmine then.
All right. First of all, thank you, Leah, for being here, and thank you, Alex, for hosting. I'm a little under the weather, so if I'm not my usual like self, that's why. But yeah, I am an OnlyFans creator. I am also a lawyer, so I know that's a pretty rare combination. But I think one of the benefits of OnlyFans is that it's brought in a lot of women who, because of how lucrative the platform is, because of the freedom it allows us, the control it allows us, that it's attracted a lot of women that wouldn't have otherwise been attracted to more, I guess, unfavorable forms of sex work and forms of sex work that had more exploitation associated with it than I would say OnlyFans does. And I think that whether OnlyFans is good or bad for you depends on you, right? We are all different. And even though there may be some differences on average between the genders or, people in general, I think that there's still more intergroup variation than intergroup variation than intragroup variation. And I think that depending on your temperament and who you are, like for somebody like me, I very much love it. For someone like Leah, she didn't like it. And now she's out of it and I'm very happy for her. But I don't think we can have this one size fits all. There's not a job that everybody would 100% like, right? Like as a lawyer, I have some friends who love being a lawyer and they would hate being on OnlyFans. I'm the opposite. A lot of lawyers also have a lot of like mental health issues, higher rates of depression, suicide, etc. That doesn't mean being a lawyer is bad. It just means that it's bad for those people. I also don't think that OnlyFans has increased any like I don't think it's created any more of a society where men are now commodifying women in any way, like compared to the past. I don't think it has set women back in any way. And I think you can make the argument that for some, it's actually set women forward. So yeah, I guess that would be my overall position.
Cool. All right. Now we're going to get into the open panel portion. So have at it, ladies.
Sure.
I think to start off, let me clarify that I loved having an OnlyFans when I did. And it was, I made way too much money for way too little work. It messed with my perception of workflow. It messed with my perception of work in general and what sort of money I could and should be making, or whatever. Fast money comes, fast money goes. You know the saying. And I also loved OnlyFans because of the constant male attention I was getting, which a lot of women like a lot. But is that necessarily good for us? I mean, it's potentially neutral, potentially very bad for us, especially if you're someone who wants to settle down in a monogamous relationship. That does a lot of stuff. It changes your brain chemistry, especially when you go into sex work very young. Also, we see. I just don't know. When you say that it hasn't set us back in anywhere, that sex work hasn't contributed to the collapse of society even a little bit, I mean, it's hard for me to even understand where you're coming from, because in a world where we commodify, so I mean, this is late stage capitalism at its finest. The idea that we can sell our body as a product, and I think that the implications of that are very negative, because if our bodies are a product, then rape is a potential property crime, and obviously, like that doesn't bode well for society in general.
Yeah. So I would say that, like, when you're talking about like monogamous relationships, for example, I think that you should find someone who shares your values. And I am not one that, like, if a 19-year-old off the street is like, hey, I want to do this, and this is what this is, and like, I'd be like, hey, these are the potential consequences. I don't think it's for everybody. You have to make sure it aligns with your values, your moral framework, etc. But I don't think a society that forces people to all live one way or all seek out these long-term monogamous relationships, which we're not even good at as a species, that it's we like lifelong monogamy, we're really bad at. We're really good at serial monogamy. And there are a ton of people who don't have an issue with sex work. I think I have a unique experience because I come from like a high level of academia. And I always like had a lot of privilege, and I was always around people of like higher socioeconomic status or people who really excelled in academia. And in that segment of society, things like sex work are becoming more accepted. I've been like really welcomed, and a lot of people give me praise for this. Red pill or like incel world, and they're like, you're a fucking whore. You don't see that in that segment of society. So that could just be my experience. I also would say that, like, sex work is the oldest profession in the book. So it might be cool to envision a world where this didn't exist, but it always has existed. I don't think there's been any other time where women had it better than they do now. And I don't think there's any other time as it pertains to sex work where women had more flexibility with it than they do now with platforms like OnlyFans. So I don't think that OnlyFans has made anything worse for women. Or especially not made anything worse for sex workers. I think it's made things a lot better for sex workers in that way. And I think that, the sexual revolution and the being more cognizant of something like consent happened at the same time for a reason. It wasn't just an accident. It wasn't just that everybody malfunctioned in their thinking, because the experience that we're trying to kind of protect is that women having the autonomy and the ability to make decisions for themselves. So, and when someone comes in and takes that from you, like rape, that's why we've had the Me Too movement, and we've outlawed things like marital rape since the 90s, because we're trying to protect that experience of like, you get to choose what you want to do with your body. Because we all know when you have a choice that, we all know that having sex or expressing your sexuality in a way that you want to is a very positive experience, versus doing it in a way you don't want to, or having somebody abuse you or rape you is obviously not that. So I don't think that those two things happened at the same time accidentally. I think that was a crucial part of the sexual revolution. And I like that you share your experience about OnlyFans, because a lot of women would relate to you. I think a lot of women would have a negative feel like they might have not realized it at the time, but they have had a negative impact due to doing OnlyFans. But there are also women like me or women in the middle who may not be exactly like you and I don't think that you can assume just because you've had a negative impact from it, or that, you know, I like you felt like you like the male attention. Like I'm the opposite. I don't feel like I've never had issues with that. And maybe that's partially due to background. I never really seeked validation based off how I didn't even have social media until I started OnlyFans 2 years ago. I didn't have an Instagram. I didn't have anything. So I don't think we could say that all women's experience on OnlyFans is exactly the same. And I think there are a lot, for just as many women who are on OnlyFans that want to be out of it, I think there's a lot of women who would like their lives better if they were doing what I'm doing rather than working like a job that they hate for little to no money, who aren't getting into OnlyFans because of things like stigma, etc.
Well, I don't think that's true, just based off of the fact that sex workers is some of the highest reported in mental illness across the board. So I don't know if that's necessarily true. And also, I can appreciate how you have a very individualistic stance on like a lot of these things, and how you say, well, it's all about, you know, critiquing and doing like body checks within yourself and seeing if this is. I mean, it's all very individualistic. Like you need to have someone with your morals. You need to find someone with your morals and whatever. Obviously, you know, on a base level, I can definitely level with you there. I mean, at my core, I believe in individualism because I'm young and I think that I'm never going to die. And I think that nothing I do will ever affect anyone around me. But culturally, I mean, there are things that are good and bad for society as a whole. Like having OnlyFans is very akin to having polyamorous relationships. A lot of women in OnlyFans have partners. This is some form of polyamory, and we know that polyamorous societies do worse. In societies that are completely hedonistic, we do worse. So, even coming from like a secular stance, where I just want everyone, I want to live in a society that's safe and equal to women and men. I don't think that you can make the argument that OnlyFans is a positive, is a net good for this. Another thing is actually, fuck, I completely forgot what I was going to say.
No worries. I would say, okay, so another fact about me, my parents are immigrants from Iran. And I've traveled a lot, and I very much value, I feel so grateful to live in an individualistic society that values individual rights as opposed to sociocentric societies that quash those rights. And I'm not saying that Iran is like an example, the only example of a sociocentric society, but I do believe very much in individual choice and individual rights rather than imposing any one form of relationship or job or what's the right way or even a moral framework onto everybody. I don't know where.
So you're willing to live in a society that is on the verge of collapse, or that is not like safe or potentially.
Do you think that the West or places where like sex work, like I would say Western countries, do you think there are worse places to live than countries that are, I guess, less?
No, but part of why the West is such a beautiful place to live is because we've had social norms based around Christian secular values, like being against sex work and being against polyamory, and that's why those were the building blocks of why our country is so great, is because we are a mostly monogamous society with values, not imposed legislatively, obviously, but socially conditioned. And I am a firm believer that even social condition is very impactful.
I mean, if you look at like the happiest countries or the countries where people report being the happiest, that have the least amount of issues, least amount of like everything, you're going to find like European countries, Nordic countries, you're going to find places like the US where you're allowed to be quote unquote hedonistic, as opposed to cultures that see the individual as just a member of society and that your individual rights or your individual feelings don't matter. So like something like women and what women want to do or what women are meant to do, right? There's something called sociosexuality, right? And while it may be on average that males have a more unrestricted sociosexual orientation than women do, there is a lot of variation. So I don't know, let's say it's 10% of women, or let's say it's 20% of women, or let's say it's 20% of people that do want like a polyamorous relationship. There are some people who do lean that way, right? It's part of who they are. I don't think that having a society where we don't allow that or don't accept that or stigmatize that is really going to be better for anybody. I think the stigma and the enforcement of these norms, and I know you're not somebody who's like shaming women that do this or anything, but the stigma hurts the women that are in it that we don't want in it because they don't have another choice, but it just hurts everybody.
Well, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. So for a society that is safe and healthy and happy, I would take a couple of OnlyFans girls that are unhappy because they're being shamed for their work. Personally, I'd rather live in a society that is protective of the nuclear family than protective of an OnlyFans girl.
I mean, why not have a society that's just protective of people making their individual choices? Like, what am
because that's not realistic.
Well, no,
because individualism isn't realistic.
It's
just not.
It's what we're doing. Well, this is exactly what we're doing. Like, what am I doing?
And more women are reporting being unhappy than ever before. We have horrible birth rates. Our marriage rates are suffering. I mean, there's so much going on that like you can point to that is like, oh, we are on the bridge of a big. You don't know that
that's why. Just because A and B are, it doesn't mean that A caused B, right? It could be a multitude of other things.
Sure, it could be multiple. It could be a multitude of things, but we see that in any other society where this exists.
Look at like Syria and like Iran, they have very low rates of mental illness. That's because they don't take mental illness seriously, right? This is something that's recently been a thing where you can just go to the doctor and say, I'm depressed, like TikTok culture. I don't necessarily know if the quality of life nowadays for women, I would argue that it's not worse than in any other time at all. I don't know what other time you would have rather lived in. As opposed to now where you think it would have been better for us. I don't know exactly what like a woman like me who's choosing to live my life and do OnlyFans, how I'm affecting your ability to go live a trad monogamous life. I think we are different. We're temperamentally different. Or whatever, you know,
just monogamous, just typical. Yeah, just typical.
Okay, well, or to live a typical life, right? Yeah. So I don't think that I'm impeding on your ability to do that. But if you're
not impeding on my ability to do it. But what happens when we normalize OnlyFans and when we normalize hedonistic pursuit, that does start to affect society as a whole. Even the individual can affect society as a whole.
So in what ways has the proliferation of OnlyFans worsened society? Can you give me any outcomes? Or even porn, right? Porn became widely available in the late 90s, early 2000s. Abortion rates are down 41%. Crime is down. Child abuse is actually down. Violence is down since the 90s. So I'm not saying
not for sex. I don't know if you know this, but not for sex workers. So for sex workers, all of those things are still very, very high.
They're still very, very high, but OnlyFans is safer. And I think that a part of the thing that is true. Less safe, I would say what's making things less safe for sex workers is legislation like SESTA FOSTA or any type of legislation that affects the ability of sex workers to do their job in a safe way. That has been like when Trump passed that in 2018, we have the data now. It has not made things safer for sex workers.
Sure.
And so I don't think that legislation.
I would never advocate.
I'm not saying you believe in the legislation.
I would never advocate to get rid of OnlyFans.
So do you believe that the government should come in and do you believe are you talking about like a social
I don't even think
restriction, or do you believe in legal ramifications or like legal involvement?
I mean, if I could snap my fingers and OnlyFans can be gone tomorrow, I would not. I mostly just wish that OnlyFans never existed. Like I obviously wish that we didn't have to commodify the female body in this way and sell it and create like a product out of it. Ultimately, I don't think that is good for women. I don't think that's good for families. I don't think that's good with how men view us. I think that there is a very clear reason why most of the sex trade is female, and it's because of male appetite. And I don't necessarily think that that's a positive thing to say that one sex is now in this role as the bot and one sex is in this position as the buyer. I don't think that that's good for an equal society.
So like, you know, yeah, ideally I don't want drugs, but you know, people are addicted to drugs. And so maybe things like, okay, harm reduction. And I'm not saying that that's exactly like you look at the impacts of like, okay, maybe we should have centers where people. So yeah, ideally
we try to stop people from doing drugs. We should try to stop people from doing sex work.
But like, you know what I mean? Like instead of, you can't have this utopia where like, okay, I wish it never existed. Well, it does exist, right? And men have always viewed women's bodies this way. I don't think that OnlyFans has made men view us any worse than they did in the 40s,
Well,
50s, 60s, and pick your year. I don't think it's made anything worse. I would argue it's made things a little bit better in the sense that women now, especially while we're being more cognizant of things like boundaries, consent, autonomy, that women like me or like you in the past, which maybe you had a different experience than me, are able to dictate this on our own terms. Like for someone like me who came from a lot of privilege, had a very high level of education, had a really great six-figure job, and I still enjoy this. Like, am I something's wrong with me, or is there clearly a way?
Well, no, you are just in you are in like the top you are like the 1% of women who has this life and also enters the sex trade or enters the sex industry, right? Like most women do not have your experience who enter the sex industry.
But if it's inherently negative, and if
this is obviously nothing that you do as like a privileged wealthy person will really affect you in any big way. But you are creating. But you are
when I was a lawyer, I didn't like it. My mental health was suffering. I hated sitting in an office and billing my time in 6-minute increments. Like, even though
sure, but that's a great example of the individualistic pain, not really like greater, like not having a greater effect on society. Whereas, like, even if you are enjoying your position in the sex industry, there are thousands of women who don't even I mean, most of who is on OnlyFans don't even make $100 a month, and they're still, and then now they have to deal with all. Now they have to deal with all negative.
The average YouTuber makes either. You know, it's
okay, but do you not realize that there's a difference?
Wait, Lav, let her just finish her thought and then jump in.
Wait, well, I was in the middle of talking.
Yeah, she can go.
Okay.
I don't understand this idea that OnlyFans is the same thing as any content creation, because the negative effects for having an OnlyFans are far more vast than you just having like an unsuccessful YouTube account. Obviously, you still get all the social negative repercussions of being naked online.
And I do think that's changing slowly but surely. Like, social attitudes shift significantly in a short period of time. Like, you know, there was a time where people said, oh, gay people shouldn't adopt kids because everyone's going to make fun of them, or, you know, whatever. And then depending on where you live and who you're around, we are in a culture war for a reason. And like, there's a lot of people who agree with you and there's a lot of people who agree with me. And I think we can have a society where not everybody is following one type of ideology. And so if something about this was inherently bad, or just the experience of being objectified or putting myself on the internet to be objectified would make me feel a negative way, I don't think I'm that much of an anomaly, in the sense that there are a lot of people who would prefer to do something like this, especially as the stigma becomes less and less rampant, because OnlyFans has.
So you want to get rid of stigma with sex work?
Yeah, of course.
So you believe that there's no moral repercussions to having sex be a product in capitalism?
I think sex is always a product, and I don't think there's any negative moral issues with a woman choosing to put herself on the internet. Like, just because you allow other people to objectify
okay,
so
if sex becomes a product in one facet of life, like on OnlyFans, it becomes a product in capitalism in general. And if you want to normalize sex work, then I think that the logical conclusion is normalizing money and sex as like a bartering system. So your boss asking you to then like get a blowjob, even at like a law firm, becomes like less serious just by virtue of like, oh well, sex work is work, so your boss can potentially ask this of you.
How do you explain the fact that as sex work has become a little bit more accepted, that at the same time as that, your boss is now, it's less acceptable at the same time in our society for your boss to do that, right? That's what the whole Me Too movement was about. We have a lot of training in law firms now on how not to make women feel uncomfortable.
Well, they're diametrically opposed.
At the same time that we are respecting women's autonomy and we are being more stigmatizing sex workers less and less. Is that just an accident, or is there something about?
So I don't know where you have this idea that sex is not stigmatized, or that sex is not, like, there's not moral outcry about sex. It's becoming less and less
stigmatized. If you look at the polling on people's views towards sex work, that's not true. I mean,
it just isn't.
Look this up. We can look this up about people's attitudes towards sex work are changing, especially if you compare.
I think that people are realizing that they can make a lot of money off of it. So obviously, it's going to be like a positive in a capitalistic society. But sex has not changed being taboo. Like, sex will never not have any like moral underpinnings. So
then why? Like, how can as sex? So like, it's become less like, right? We don't have a scarlet letter anymore for having casual sex in the way we did in the 1670s. You're not never going to find a husband now if you do X. The reputational damage to women who are more promiscuous or choose to do sex work is, I'm telling you, it's still there, but it is less rampant. And if you look at the polling on social attitudes towards sex about women who do sex work, especially in the higher ranks like academia, media, etc., that really are downstream from or affect culture quite a bit, those attitudes have shifted. And at that same time, what has been worse?
No, this has only happened in the past 5 years. We won't actually know the repercussions.
More, can I finish?
10, 15 years
we have made it more acceptable to do this kind of work. You are less stigmatized than in the past for doing this kind of work. And where are these horrible negative repercussions? Where is this society now that's normalized this, right? Or starting to normalize this? And what are we seeing that's happening that's so horrible compared to the past? That's what I want to
just really quickly just throw some data into it because I was looking it up because it's an interesting proposition. So I looked at the Gallup poll. It looked at 20 years ago compared to 8 years ago. So it does seem that people's perception of sex-related stuff, like sex outside of marriage, single mothers, sex even amongst teenagers, every single one of the metrics, the stigma has been going down. More people find it acceptable. That's 20 years to 8 years ago. So just throwing that out.
A woman like me would have never done this. Even, I mean, there wasn't even a platform to do it, but I was confident enough that, at least in academia, at least in this circle, I've had professors, people really are like, this is cool. There shouldn't be, you're not doing anything wrong, right? That's what our society is starting to realize. What are you doing wrong, Jazmen, by choosing to do this over being a lawyer, right? And people are starting to hop on board with that. If your argument is true, then we should be seeing some type of negative impact on this. Like, what is that impact? Is it just that marriage rates have gone down? Is it just that, like, what exactly? Birth rates? Are you just really concerned about birth rates? Like, what is it that you think is so negative right now that's happening in society as this change is occurring?
A ton. I mean, I won't argue with you that I believe that people are prioritizing things that they shouldn't prioritize. We see this permeate throughout all of culture right now, just through sheer narcissism, even on OnlyFans, or even on social media. I mean, not even on OnlyFans. But yeah, I think that, I mean, we see this all throughout society. I mean, OnlyFans is a symptom to a greater issue, which is like not being able to show restraint. You said something earlier where like you didn't think that humans were like naturally monogamous. I agree with you. But the cultures and the communities that do the best statistically are cultures that choose to be monogamous, even to the contrary of that.
In Europe, where secularism is up, people are less religious, people are more accepting of polyamory, people in Sweden, even in the US, Canada, etc., are these people worse off than places that are more religious and more akin to enforcing even social monogamy, or socially? Like, where are you seeing this? Where are all these more Western, modern, progressive societies how are they worse off? How are women in Norway and Sweden worse off than women in, let's say, country
people in Norway and Sweden are still getting married. I don't know where this idea is coming from. They're still obviously getting married. They're still engaging in monogamy.
No, some of them, but it's more accepted in those
cultures. Most of them. It's still most of them.
If you choose not to be monogamous, you're in a polyamorous relationship. If you're a woman who has multiple boyfriends in Sweden, that's not the same as being a woman that has multiple boyfriends in Lebanon. These are different. These are very different. So
we see across the board that even communities. I mean, we see across the board that. Sorry, I have a couple things up. In cultures that permit men to take multiple wives, or the opposite, the intersexual competition that causes greater levels of crime, violence, poverty, and gender inequality than in societies that institutionalize and practice monogamous marriage. I can put this in side.
So are you saying that cultures like Islamic cultures that allow men to take like 4 wives? Like, yeah, I don't necessarily think that's bad, but so are you saying that?
What do you mean you don't think that's bad? That the culture does worse as a whole. There's more crime, there's more violence.
No, but I don't think that's necessarily because people are in polyamorous relationships. But I do think that when one side is able to do it, like we see in Islamic countries,
intersexual competition can become very violent.
So what do you mean by intersexual competition? Are you saying that now, are you making the red pill incel argument that because women have more choice and we're not like forced to be monogamous, and that we're leaving the 20% of the bottom men out of it, and they're going to all like Elliot Rodgers us? Like, is this what you're saying? And that is somehow now our responsibility to create a society where we are bringing down women back to when they needed to have a man instead of wanting to have a man, and to restrict that choice that we now have that we didn't have in the past? And are you using that to compare to societies where women have way less rights and only men are able to have take multiple
No, I'm not making
wives?
that argument. I think that females will be sexual selectors forever. It's just by virtue of our biology, it's just going to be true because of investment theory, parental investment theory. We have a lot more to lose during our gestation period because it's 9 months and then potentially 18 years. So we are just going to be sexual selective society.
The choice that we have is now the fact that we have more choice and cultures like ours.
No, so
men, in the Middle East, you think that's bad?
So men in general. So if there is more, so like if men take multiple boyfriends or multiple sexual partners, there's more crime, and vice versa.
Do you mean multiple wives?
Yeah, there's just more crime.
So what countries though? Because the only places where men can take multiple wives are in the Middle East, and those countries have a.
So I'm talking about all throughout history in general. So I'm not talking about even places that exist right now. I'm talking about just like statistically what psychologists have, or psychologists have collected data from, is just from all throughout society.
I just don't see how, like, if we're looking at the world right now, the places that are
it's not just the world right now. So we need to take into account what has been true as well as what is true right now.
Well, what the problem is that the countries that are doing the best are thinking the least like you. So that's the thing. While you can say historically Christian ethics have informed maybe our typical moral system, at the same time, people are becoming less religious. We choose to live in a secular society. We don't want that. And maybe that influence has been good and has led to some good things, but that doesn't mean we now need to hold on to it. We don't need to hold on. We don't have to have the traditionalist fallacy that just because this is the way things were done.
That's part of why we've done so good.
Best way to do things, because it's not the best way to do things, because if it was, we wouldn't have all wanted to fucking change it. We would have been a bunch of women.
We want to change it because we are naturally restless as a species, not because it doesn't
and if
work.
We're naturally restless as a species, and you just want to force us into the past, which obviously didn't work for a reason, I don't see how that's really going to help.
It did work. It made us the strongest. It made us the strongest country imaginable. So I don't know what you mean. Part of why we are so strong as a country is because of Christian values.
We are strong as a country because we have a constitution that specifically did not allow Christian values and ethics, while many people still believed in it. We are the greatest country ever because we said that we do not want to force anyone into this. We don't want this to be allowed a ton of immigration and a ton of other people from different cultures, different backgrounds to come here. I think that's what makes us the best country in the world.
But even then, there's still an American way that those immigrants have adopted and become more successful for. I mean, plenty of places leave to make money here, but also to exist in the most powerful country in the world. And part of the building blocks in being the most powerful are being a monogamous Christian society, even though it is not.
Nobody's immigrating to the United States because they want more monogamy from the South America or wherever they're coming.
Women will come here from places like the Middle East to live safer lives, generally.
Yeah, safer lives,
part of why our country is safe,
it's safer for women when they have more choice. It's safer for women when they have more freedom. It's safer for women when they have equal rights. That's one of the reasons that a lot of women want to come here and they enjoy coming here. Like, you even have passport bros who go into these societies where monogamy socially is far more enforced, where there's far more stigma against these women, and they're bringing them here where they have equal rights, where they're not going to be as shamed. I still think that there are issues, and they're allotted the ability to be themselves. They want to come here for that. The United States is the United States because we believe in individual rights rather than making ourselves like a sociocentric.
Sure, Again, I don't believe in legislation against sex work, or not against sex work, against OnlyFans. I don't even believe in enforcing Christian values on people. I think that that's part of why America is so great. But also, it permeates through culture even without having to legislate it. We were founded on a Judeo-Christian culture.
We were also founded on secularism, right? I can go through.
Christian secularism exists.
No, but we wanted people who had different values to still be able to live here and live by those values, right? That is one of the greatest parts of our country. That's why we don't allow things like polygamy in America. That's why we don't allow a lot of laws in the court in America. Just because things were, and maybe we should, right? Just because we allow things like marital rape in the past. We allow things like slavery in the past. It's not that there is obviously a cultural component to what our legislation is the way it is, and things like polygamy have not yet, the scale hasn't been tipped enough for enough people to agree with that, or to be able to examine their natural more disgust factor, whatever, when it comes to things like that. But at the same time, Alex just pointed out that we are becoming less and less stringent on things like casual sex, things like sex work, for instance. And I don't think that has made us any worse. And I don't think you could look at any country where that has become more stigmatized and say that those countries
we
are
see
doing
that
better
women and men are deeply unhappy. We're seeing that people are becoming increasingly more upset with the dating pool, that they're having a harder time talking to the opposite sex, that they're having a hard time getting married. I don't know how you could see these things.
That's the thing. That's also
not true.
A lot of people, yes,
most women want to get married.
I can find, but less
men
and less
don't want to get married. You're right.
No,
but in societies where women
compared to the past want to get married, it's not the same. A lot of women in the past, before we were able to enter the workforce, we had to get married. We had to find a husband. This was the only way.
We're also entering a society in which now women are lying to each other and saying you can be very happy and just be a girl boss and don't get married, and then we see rates of like high depression amongst like women CEOs.
But you don't know that's causing the high depression, right? It could be something like social media. It could just be, I think one of the biggest contributors of that is that we don't have a lot of community in the West. Whereas if you go to other cultures, you see they have community, whether it's through religion, whether it's just, those types of things. Isolation is a big contributor to mental health. And we also don't, like, again, you can't go in Iran and be like, hey, I'm
not saying that this thing is causing that's the only thing that's causing mental illness, but we see that unmarried women report being very unhappy being unmarried and childless. Even if you just look at evolutionary psychology, we can see that women naturally want to pair bonds. They naturally want to be monogamous.
I'm going to link this in the chat if Alex wants to pull it up. There's a huge study by the Institute of Family Studies and it's looking at a bunch of other data, a bunch of other studies. Children actually tend to make people, especially women, far less happy. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't have children. Yeah, I can link it.
This is just not true.
No, I mean, that's
women.
So now you just, when the data doesn't, like, you can't just say something.
I'd love to see this study because
sure. If you can put it in the private chat,
I will
pull it up on the screen.
Because I know scientists and psychologists all agree that women are the more naturally monogamous sex that find meaning in things like having children.
All our evolution, all it cares about is our reproducing. It doesn't care about your happiness. It doesn't care about how your well-being. It just wants you to pop out as many children as possible. There's a reason that the people that I guess are more,
there's a global conspiracy by Big Baby.
As many children. It's because while that may be our evolutionary purpose, I don't think living your life in alignment with solely your evolutionary purpose is the best way to be happy. I just sent the link in the private chat. If you could open it and even pull it up on the screen, because I think on the front it has like the bullet points that it found.
I got you. Okay, give me one second.
Older parents with minor children still at home are less happy than their empty nest contemporaries by about 5 or 6 percentage points.
Okay, here we go. Nope, no mailing list. Okay, where do you want me to go?
Both men and women report less. I mean, you could just. Sorry, I went on a different tab. Go to the top, like the very top, and you can even look at the highlights on the side. Now, you can go down and read the study, but like the second bullet point, both men and women report less personal happiness and less happy marriages when there are minor children around the house. This has been replicated a lot, and the gap is actually very wide.
This is 50 to 70 years old.
What?
This is 50 to 70. So this is with
it's not just
50 to 70
year olds. This is not just looking at 50 or 70 year olds. Go down. You can see different age groups. You can see that was just one of the highlights from it.
This is all 50, 70 years old.
Let's see.
With minor children. Every single thing in this is 50.
Wait, hold on. Let me look at this. Because if it is, I have like 10 of these. But let's see. Most of the studies have relied on data from a recent analysis of 22 countries by sociologist Jennifer Glass. Now nowhere is the parental happiness gap larger than the United States. American parents are notably less happy. So you're saying that these are just looking at 50 to 70-year-olds and that's it?
What it says.
So relatively few studies. Okay, so no. Look, like if you go down, This relatively few studies have looked at children making older parents happy, but all the other studies are showing that it does make people less happy at all ages. Like you could literally just look up, do children make you less? I'll send you like 5 more sources.
So, okay, so relatively few studies have looked at whether children make older parents happy. One study, I do think, seems like Lav is right that it seems most of this is focused on 50 to 70. One study found no relationship between being an empty nest parent and happiness. Another study found no relationship for men, but more complex results for women that depend on whether mothers
look
have.
go to the first paragraph. Look at the data on the 22 countries, because that's not just looking at, and that's linked in there. It's not just looking at older parents, and you can just look at the.
Enduring Findings Social Science and a recent analysis from Jaffar by sociologist James Glass puts America results nowhere as the parental happiness. Yeah, sorry. You want me to click on this?
Yeah, like that link that it has where it has the at the very beginning, or here I could just link it to you.
Yep.
Okay.
There I am. Okay, so here's the abstract. I don't know if you guys want me to read it out loud or you want to read it, but
abstract recent portfolio. Let me see. Conceptualizing parenting as a stressor buffer. We hypothesize parental differences in happiness are smaller in countries providing more resource support to families. Our analysis of European social surveys and the International Social Survey Program reveal considerable variation in parenthood gap happiness across countries, with U.S. showing the largest disadvantage of parenthood or happiness when it comes to parenthood. And this is looking at not just 50 to 70-year-olds, but even if the goal is to have children, even if we're just looking at 50 to 70-year-olds, we're looking at people who chose to live their lives in the way that you're saying that they should.
No, so that's young children. That's them with having minor children from the ages of 50 to 70, which they report being unhappy with, which of course you're tired at that point. You don't want to have children at 50 to 70. You don't want to have young minor children at 50 to 70.
I think it's important to clarify.
There's something we're missing here. No one's just talking about if you have minor, who the fuck
That's
has
what the study that you gave me is talking about 50 to 70-year-olds with minor children.
Also provided the legally mandated studies factors.
I think one thing that's important to clarify. So 50 to 70 does not mean that's when they have the kid.
That's what I'm saying. It's not when they don't have the kids at 50 or 70. I chose this age range. First of all, 90% of adults have had children by the age of 50. Virtually everyone who tends to become a parent has done so by then. Secondly,
you can't really have a kid after 50.
The majority of parents have also emptied the nest. Less than 40 Americans in this age group still have minor children at home. I capped the age at 70 to exclude adults who have entered. I don't even know how to pronounce that word. Relatively few studies looked at. Yeah, so this is the reason they picked that in this particular studies, because that would be a good age group to look at the impact. Because if you look at 20-year-olds, I mean, you don't know. And we also know that marriages are negatively impacted by having children. I can link that study as well. But if you look at the study the other one that they mentioned in the beginning, that's looking at 22 countries, and it's looking at just people who are parents versus non-parents, looking at different stages of parenthood. It seems like earlier.
So you're right in that 18 to 29, they are happiest childless, but then almost immediately there's a steep unhappiness.
Wait, so between 18 to 29, they're happier, but then between 50 and 70, they're also
no. After 29, women report being far less happy, childless. And also it says here, premarital sex and cohabitation being normal, but the overwhelming majority of women still desire marriage. 87 of them still want marriage even before childbearing.
I'm not saying that most women don't want marriage. It's still what's been socialized into us. But I'm saying less and less women want marriage than.
Well, do you not? Okay, so if we're just talking about socialization, then don't you think that in a world and in a society where we're saying like, oh, you don't need to have kids, and having kids is actually so boring, and you have like a greater purpose, which is like making a bunch of money. Don't you think that would also make like women potentially upset with their like? Don't you think that it would also make people feel bad, like women feel bad about having families?
No, I don't. That is not the message I am pushing. I am not pushing. I am pushing the message that because for the longest time, it's only been a tiny blip in history, and especially in our culture, that we've started saying it's okay to not have kids. Like until literally like now, we have been pushing the message that this is your role. You should be having children. If you don't want children, something's wrong with you. This is your duty. This is how you blah, blah, blah. And now it's only been recently that a lot of women are like, wait a minute, I don't want to have children, and that's okay. Here's another study. It might not be what you want to hear, but research from the UK and US suggests the answer is a resounding yes. It shows that women who don't marry or have children are consistently the happiest group in the population. So there is a lot of data that indicates that children are not necessarily going to make you happier. So it's funny that you think that that definitely is a reason that women are more unhappy. It could be a part of it. It could be the case for someone, but I don't think that our culture has shifted so much that a lot of people who want to be mothers now like are shamed out of it. And I'm not saying that never happens, but I don't advocate for that. And I don't think it's even still as much of a mass scale issue as the reverse, where women hit my age, 29. I just turned 29, and people are like, when are you having kids? You're hitting a wall. Don't you want to have kids? Like, I think that's still the majority mainstream culture.
Okay, well, the majority mainstream culture will want to have children. So if you're someone who doesn't want to have children, that's obviously they're outliers to a population. If there are plenty of women who don't ever want to have children, but that's not necessarily good for society, right? So like if we're not reproducing, that's actually very bad for us because cultures die that way. So that's
I don't think that we're here to I don't think that we should be right now forced to live less fruitful lives so that
do you think I want to
generations
force anyone to do anything?
No, I don't think you want to force. I agree with you, but that's why I don't think you should even be pushing this on women. I think that women should do what feels right to them. If you want to be a mother and that is something that is your calling, that is what you want to do, then do it. But and if you don't want to be a mother, if you've never had a maternal instinct, because there are women like this who just don't want to do it. They don't
Part
wanna
of
have
society
kids.
is not letting just people who don't know better just do things that they feel
It's
like
not that
they
they don't
want to
work.
do.
If that was the case, it wouldn't be the most privileged women that are also choosing to have the least amount of kids. The dink lifestyle right now
No,
seems
I
to be
think that
showing the greatest level of happiness. Dual income, no kids. It is the women
no,
usually
you as we brought up earlier, we are like an extremely depressed society.
no, but you don't know why that is. But the poorest
Well,
women,
part
the
of it
most
is because we're too
underprivileged women are
educated.
the
We're
ones
overeducated.
having the most kids. The least privileged, most poor women are having the most kids. The higher status
And they
women
actually
are having
report being happiest. They actually
huh?
report being happy at levels far greater than
No,
the
so
rich,
you're saying
waspy woman who does not have children.
women who don't have money and are living that's
The
actually one
average,
of the biggest
yes.
that is actually one of the
Even in
biggest
developing
contributors in
countries,
both of these studies.
even
That
in
was one of the
developing
biggest
countries,
factors that
women
actually affect
report
their level of
in
happiness no, women in poor countries
you can look
report
this
being
up.
happier, but that's not for that reason. In the United States, women who are poor, and especially mothers who are poor, actually report way less
No, I'm not
happiness.
talking, not even poor. I'm just talking about middle class. So obviously, hey, let's say that you have most things paid for. Or
But
most
like
whatever, you don't have to worry about your bills. Obviously
but
worrying about your bills would make you unhappy, but there are greater,
yes.
I mean, happiness, greater purpose, like women feel greater purpose, greater happiness when they're married and have children.
Let me just
No,
quickly
they don't
weigh in,
report
because
that when they have
also
children.
let me just really quickly throw out two more studies that I personally read in the past. So one of them supports Lav, one of them supports Jazmen. So the first one is that it seems that when they look at women who don't work and stay at home, have kids, women who work and don't have kids, and women who work and have kids, by far the happiest ones are the ones who work and have kids. It seems that the women who just work and women who just have kids are kind of equal in terms of their happiness level. And then there's this big increase if they work and have kids. Now, the other study that I've seen is that it does seem that women who have kids later on in life, like 30s, do seem to be happier than women who have kids.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
So those are the
Women
two.
who
Yeah,
have
I know that
women-
that's the case. I think that having children at I don't think that you should just get married and have children as soon as you're able to. I think that especially having children after 25 is very important to a brain that's developed.
And if possible, after you become educated, and I mean, maybe
Yes.
like he said, go and work and make something of yourself instead of being.
Yes.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a stay-at-home housewife or being a stay-at-home mom. I just don't think. I think you're making a big gamble by doing that, and I don't think that this seems to have positive outcomes for you or your child. But my point is that I don't think necessarily pushing marriage and kids makes everybody happier. I think it makes a lot of people less happy, and I don't think that
maybe a little less happy, happy for a
I
safer
don't think that
society.
there is, but this is the thing, so you want people to have kids and have more kids because generations down the line, do you know how long it'll take for our society to collapse? like you think that women should sacrifice themselves now if they don't want children, and this is not something they want to do.
I don't know if you know about the birth rates in Korea, but they're potentially going to be completely wiped out in 100 years. They just won't exist.
But Korea also isn't a place that is. I don't think that the reason the birth rates are declining in Korea is because women are liberated and are doing sex work or whatever, right?
Well,
If we're looking
it's
at things
because they are entering the work. Part of it is because they're entering the workforce and they don't want to have children because they're
Well,
smart
even
and
if
they're
that's
educated.
the
They don't
case,
want to
do
have
you think
children.
so what do you think the solution is? Do you think that they should be forced to? I know you don't think that, but what else is the solution here? Because if you're saying that it is
I think that we should
important,
prioritize.
They should prioritize what? If it is so important, a lot of women want to work. They want to do this. They don't
I'm
want to
not
sit at home and have
against.
babies.
I don't think that you
Oh.
should stay at home. I don't think you need to stay at home to be a mother.
Yeah,
there
but
are
my point is that if these women are working and they don't want to have kids, especially because the women who are the most privileged, at least in Western society, tend to have less children, that what is your exact like argument here that we should be, I know you don't mean to like legislate, you're not talking about breeding facilities, but at the same time, like
No.
you're saying that they should ignore their feelings, they should ignore their
I think
inclination.
we should bring back
towards
Christian values
motherhood.
because everyone is happier and safer.
I don't. And where is your evidence that societies that promulgate monogamy and all of that are today are better than ones that don't? Can you show me?
I mean, we can even. I mean, it's all around you. But yes, I can also send you some.
What do you mean
some
it's all
links.
around me? I live in the United States, so I'm really grateful, and we actually aren't pushing those things, and I think that's made things a lot better for women.
Have. Only in the past 10 years have we even opened up this idea of polyamory. We have been a strictly monogamous society based on Christian secular values.
Okay, so since we've become more accepting of polyamory, what have been the catastrophic negative impact of that? Can you tell me? Like, just because a very small percentage of people are now choosing to be polyamorous, where is the horrible
no, I don't think that polyamory is going to be I don't think that polyamory is going to first of all, I don't think that polyamory is ever going to be widespread because I think that women mostly are
monogamy. Yeah.
Well, not most people, most women. So men actually hate monogamy, but they do better in monogamy. Whereas like women prefer monogamy and also do better in monogamy.
You can make a blanket statement. There are men who lean monogamous too. Now there may be more men who have
okay.
More
This doesn't. I don't. The individualistic like data points. I just don't want to even interact with. Obviously, I know that there are exceptions to rules.
Let's say 10% of women want to be polyamorous. We just say fuck that 10% because somehow them living
What
the
does
lives
mean?
that they want.
What do you mean? Fuck them. What does that mean? What do you mean fuck them? What does that mean that I'm saying?
Okay, so if 10% of women want to be polyamorous or want to be promiscuous or want to do XYZ and they're able to do that and we don't shame them for it, how is that worse for society if that 10% does what the fuck they want?
So like, how is it
better for society that we tell that 10% no, you have to do things
so it's
our
about
way?
Creating social norms.
But that's my point. If the social norm is okay,
I don't care about shaming people who live in a way that is conducive to a bad society.
This is my fucking point, though. When you're saying like, oh, most people leave.
You're saying like, this is so mean. People will feel so bad if we shame them for doing what they want to do with their lives. Okay, if you're happy doing what you want to do with your life, it shouldn't matter if most of the world doesn't care or cater to you. That's why polyamory marriages are not
straight. So you guys who are gay, I mean, sorry, like no, it's better for a society if most of us are still able to be straight, but we still completely accept and let people who aren't straight.
Not most people are gay, whereas like I think a lot of we are a naturally polyamorous
that's my fucking
species,
point, girl.
which is bad for society.
Most people are
showing
straight.
restraint.
There is a minority of people who are gay, and it is not better for society to demonize the minority because they are the minority. I don't know what you mean
demonizing. I don't think that you need to demonize something to create a social norm.
But a minority of people are polyamorous, and it is not. I don't see any evidence that it's better for society to stigmatize that 10%. Just like it's not better for society to stigmatize the minority.
Okay, so you're focusing on stigmatization. I'm not focusing on stigmatization. I'm focusing on creating a social norm, building something positive, not negating something.
So should we create a social norm for heterosexuality?
There's already a social norm for heterosexuality. That's like naturally how we are as humans.
I understand, but the fact that norm has kind of shifted in a little bit, right? This data also shows us that people are more and more accepting of gay people. Yes, it is. Look at the data on how people feel about gay people in the last 20 years. Look at that.
No, but more people are not
worse now because we've been more accepting of that minority group. Has society become worse because of that in any way?
No, but I don't think that sexuality has the same implications as something like sex work and
Well, if you're
monogamy.
talking about nuclear family and you're talking about marriage and blah 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 blah, then
Yes,
I
but
would
only
say
a
that
certain. We are hardwired as humans mostly to biologically reproduce with the opposite
and
sex.
we are
So I
also
don't.
hardwired as humans mostly to be in to be attracted to the opposite gender so that we can reproduce. But there is a minority of people
Yeah,
who
but
don't
there
fall
aren't
into that
enough gay
category.
people. There aren't enough gay people that they're going to ruin society
There
in
aren't
any
enough
way.
polyamorous people that are going to destroy
You're
society
right.
either.
You're right,
So
which is why I
so
just
why
said
do
that I
we
don't think that polyamory will become widespread, but normalizing promiscuity and normalizing not getting
normalizing being
married,
gay?
normalizing having children.
Normalizing that it's okay to be with the same gender when you can't reproduce, normalizing that it's okay to be
You cannot
bisexual,
compare these two
normalizing XYZ.
things. You
You can
cannot
make the
compare these two
exact
things.
same argument. Yeah, because
No,
it's the
you can't
same
compare
thing.
these two things. It's a
Why?
sexuality based because they're different. You can't compare them.
Polyamory is most of the data on polyamory also shows that it tends to lean towards being more of an orientation as opposed to there's people that are just have an unrestricted sociosexual status. A lot of those people don't even process like some of the same emotions that we do. There's a ton of data on this and they are a minority, just like gay and trans people are a minority, but it is the social norm should not be that they are doing something worse than we're doing. It should be that most human beings
It's
fall
not worse. It's that they're not doing something that's going to keep our country strong and happy and healthy and
okay, so
not
what?
crime riddled.
They're just they aren't made that they aren't hardwired. Not all of us are hardwired in one way, clearly. And by allowing those people that aren't hardwired in the way that makes them a part of the majority group doesn't make society any worse. And if you do think it makes it worse, I want
It
evidence
does.
for that.
Okay.
Do you have any other
Yeah.
evidence? Do you have any evidence for that? Do you have any evidence that
Yeah.
societies that don't enforce as much of a social norm or don't
Yeah,
stigmatize?
I'll send them. I'll put them in.
Show me a society that where people are less accepting than we are towards minority sexual orientations or
Yeah,
people
I don't
where
know why
they're
you're
doing better.
focusing on that. I'm not
Well,
focusing on
because
the
it's funny because it shows that you have an
I don't think it's
inherent
funny at
issue with
all.
this. So when I give you an analogy or I compare it to something like sexuality where there is a majority, there is a norm, there are categories that we all fall into, but there are people who don't fall into those categories. And we seem to all agree that society is better when we let them be that. And the social norm is still most of us are monogamous.
Homosexuality will never create a big problem because homosexuals make up a very small portion, and they
But you just
always
said
have
polyamorous
of
people make up a very
society.
small percentage. But you just said
Sure.
polyamorous people make up a very small percentage.
No, people who live polyamorously make up a small percentage, right? Because most
Okay.
people agree that even if they want to have sex with multiple people, that society does better in monogamy. So
But
it's a social decision that we've made.
Not being polyamorous because they're thinking, oh, society does better this way. It's actually a small percentage of people who are polyamorous.
Most people don't
anyway.
think that deeply about their behavior at all.
Well, you could definitely make the argument that more and more people are coming out and living their lives in not in a heterosexual way. They're part of the LGBTQ society, and there's more of them than there was when this was less socially accepted. It's the exact same thing with polyamory. It's still a very small percentage. That percentage is growing only because we're allowing people to live their lives instead of hiding in the shadows because they're so worried about going against the social norm when it's not who they are. And how is that making anything worse for anybody? How is it making anything worse that more people identify as LGBTQ now than they did 15 years ago, or that more people identify as polyamorous than they did?
In cultures that permit men to take multiple wives, the intersexual competition that occurs creates greater levels of crime, violence, poverty, and gender inequality than in society.
All of the countries that allow men to take multiple wives.
That is a key finding of new university.
That allow men to take multiple wives also have a slew of other issues and give women no rights.
Hold up 1 second. Let me, in the interest of fairness, let me pull up the article that Lav just sent. Okay, here it is. Where do you want me to go?
I mean, it's this whole thing. It's like a brief synopsis of the study. According to Heinrich, monogamy's main cultural evolutionary advantage over polygyny is more egalitarian distribution of women, which reduces male competition and social problems. By shifting male efforts from seeking wives to paternal investment, institutionalized monogamy increases long-term planning, economic productivity, savings, and child investment. Monogamy's institutionalization has been assisted by its incorporation by religions such as Christianity. Monogamous marriage, by the way, let me just say that, let me make this really clear. I'm not a Christian. I just believe that in Christian secularism works for society. I don't have any belief in God. I just know that this is good for society, obviously.
And this is
Monogamous
probably the reason-
marriage also results in significant improvements in child welfare. I don't know if you know this, but if there is a parent in the home, if there's a non-parent partner in the home, non-biological parent partner in the home, there is a 100% increase of death for the child in America.
The problem with this stuff is that when people who are more likely to have children out of wedlock, or quote unquote single mothers, are also more likely to be poor and not have education. If you actually factor in for things like maternal education and socioeconomic status, all of this dissipates. It has nothing to do with the father being in the house. It has nothing to do with a nuclear family. It has to do with resources and education and access and status. That is what it has to do with. So this idea that no, it's just good that we should just because look at the
I'm confused on how you don't think that these things are related.
Because when you measure, like if you look at, for instance, children right now born to donor-born children, and you look at that, you see that those children that don't even have fathers, they have a donor as a father, those children are doing fine, because the women who typically have children
again, so when I know polyamory is a very rich concept. Like this is something that only rich people really even have to think about, right? Like the normal every person is going to get married. They're going to be in a monogamous relationship. And when we are a culture that is naturally monogamous, like women want to be more monogamous across the board. Women want to be more monogamous across.
Rich people are more likely to be polyamorous?
It's more likely to work. It's more likely to not create consequences for them. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, anything that rich people do is less likely to create consequences.
That's the point that I just made.
They don't have. Yeah, but my point is that I don't think polyamorous people. I haven't seen any data that shows that polyamorous people are more likely to be in this category as opposed to just an average middle class person.
I didn't make that argument.
So you're okay. What is the horrible thing that's? I still don't get it. What is? So can you tell me exactly what your argument is when it comes to?
So I'm not even saying. You keep trying to put 10%. I'm saying that something is like horrible.
Why
you
allowing
have not let me finish once.
Why allowing 10% of people, let's say, who
I don't think that we shouldn't allow people to do things. I don't know what argument you think I'm making.
So what? So then what is there anything wrong with the argument that I'm making that they should be able to do what they want and that's fine for them? And I don't think
the individual is not necessarily good for the society when we are building social norms. But do you think that the social norm should be polyamory?
Rights is conducive to having a good society.
Do you think the social norm should be polyamory?
The social norm, if we shouldn't think, well, the social norm is
yes
never
or no?
Going to be polyamory.
Yes
the social
or no?
Norm, wait, what's the question?
True, but do you think that it should be the social norm, that polyamory should be the social norm?
I think the social norm should be that you should follow the orientation that best works for you, whether that's polyamory or monogamy.
No, that's not a social norm. Do you think if you had to choose monogamy over
can literally be
so you know the answer. You know the answer, which is why you're running from this question.
It could literally be accepting people with different sexual orientations and expecting people who want to have relationships in different ways.
Do me a favor.
That's a social norm.
If you were to prescribe polyamory or monogamy for general society, which one?
When people are so different, that doesn't make fucking sense.
Why make laws when people are so different? Why make laws? Some people are pedophiles.
We don't make laws about this for a fucking reason, because we're not a fucking authoritarian country like where my parents are from, where they do enforce laws. The reason we don't put laws on people when it comes to stuff like this is because we know that's worse for society. I don't want to prescribe one way that everybody should live.
No, it's not because it's worse. It's actually not worse for society.
So different. Look at women like you and look at women like me. We should never
our liberties as Americans. It's not worse.
You and I should never have the same, because we are completely different women, and nothing.
I don't think that you're willing to engage in this conversation in like a healthy way.
I feel like I'm engaging.
You haven't even answered my question.
I answered your question. You said which one would you prescribe? You're creating a false dichotomy, though.
Jasmine, if you had to choose, okay. So just just
I
put yourself in my head.
Everyone in a society being polyamorous, or is like, I don't get your question. You're asking what I would prescribe. Like,
if I'm so clear.
Children, if I'm in a university, if I'm teaching people, I would say, hey, this is what I would prescribe.
I'm not even talking about in a university. I'm talking about even on the home level. Like if you have children and you're trying to mold your children's value system. I would never want
any of my children. I would never tell them
or let's say you're president. Let's say you're president.
Want to do. I would never tell my children you should be straight if they don't want to be straight. That is not how I believe a society.
Even though we know that polyamory is worse for society based off of the evidence that I just showed, even if we know that it's worse for society, you would not prescribe.
if your evidence is true, you're talking about countries like where the women have like no rights, and then men come in and they're able to take multiple wives. But when we look at today, when we look at
this is an
countries,
easy
when we look
question.
at countries that stigmatize polyamory less and allow people to be more polyamorous, like countries in Europe, like even the United States, like in Canada, these countries are not worse off for it in any way. The prescription that we should have on people is that, hey, even though most people
Live
fall
and
in
let
X
live.
category, no, I'm finished. Let me finish. Even though most people fall in this category, there are going to be, when there are billions of people on this planet, when we have 330 million people on this planet, and if 10% aren't hardwired like the rest of us, or 10% are temperamentally different than the rest of us, that there's anything wrong with that. It should just be, hey, these are the ways you
so
can
I'm
have
not talking about morality wise. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I don't believe in an objective morality.
Do you think our societies are worse?
It's not that I think
now?
it is statistically shown.
No.
That
We have been okay. So the data that Alex has showed you, that we've become more accepting of things like that, or if you look at Europe, where they're more accepting of things like polyamory, where they're not enforcing monogamy, where they're not putting these rigid expectations on women. Do you not want to live here? Like, what is so bad about our countries once they've started doing this? What has been so bad?
You are shadow boxing. You keep giving me positions that I don't have, and I don't know why you're doing this.
Wait, hang on, hold up a second. I'm going to step in for a second. Lav, so why don't you go ahead and clarify your position, and then also take a chance to re-ask the question that you were asking that you don't feel like you got a good answer to.
Okay. One, I think America is the greatest country that exists. It's extremely strong, economically prosperous. We're one of the safest countries. We're one of the most gender equal countries. Part of this is because of the values that the country was founded on and that permeate throughout all of culture. Monogamy has been proven to be better, healthier for society, lowering crime, lowering just even unhappiness rates. Like, this is throughout all of society. I'm so sorry, but you cannot argue this. We know that monogamous societies, monogamous cultures do better. They just do. So my question, and I'm not saying, like, again, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in a morality in the sense where I'm like, God wants us to do this, but I believe in a healthy culture. I believe in a healthy America. I want my children to live in this beautiful, amazing place for as long as it is beautiful and amazing. And I want to leave the world better than I came into it. Part of how we do that is by having children and keeping our country economically prosperous and keeping our country fertile and eugenic, so to speak. So again, I have to ask the question: if you had to choose between, let's say, enforcing a social norm of and I know that you're an individualist, and I don't really understand being an individualist, because if we were all individualists, then pedophiles would be able to be pedophiles, and we could commit a bunch of crime if we wanted. And I just don't understand that position, especially legislatively or even creating social norms. I genuinely don't understand it, because obviously, Hare Krishna, we can do whatever we want. Nobody chose to live here or whatever, but we still have to make some pretty hard decisions on how to run society and what is normal and what is enforced, even socially, not even with legislative measures, but just culturally. Obviously, we see that even in a culture like the Black community, where they value marriage less.
Wait, Lav, can you clarify the question succinctly?
Yeah, this is just
ranting. So, sorry. If you had to choose to prescribe a monogamous or a polygamous society for America, which would you choose and why?
Okay, so first of all, I agree with you. America is the greatest country in the world, but that's because we're an individualistic country. We are the only country that has been founded actually.
We are not
on
individualistic.
I didn't interrupt you. Don't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you.
You're just not talking. You're just not. You're not being.
We are an individualistic society. That is what makes America what it is. We value individualism.
Wait,
yes,
let her answer, and then you can challenge her response.
Okay.
Yeah, we do value individualism in this country. We are not a sociocentric sociocentric countries. Look up sociocentric countries and look up individualistic countries. You're going to see America on every single source you see as an individualistic country. And comparing us to highly misogynistic cultures where men can take a bunch of wives and women can't, and women have no rights, and being like, look, this one's better. If you look at today and you look at societies that have socially enforced monogamy to a greater extent, it's not the Western countries. It's not. A lot of the poorer countries actually enforce this more, and they don't seem to be any better off for it. I think that people who want to have children should have children. I think people who don't want to have children shouldn't. If I had to choose, I would enforce a social norm of choice. And this idea that individualism leads to pedophilia makes no sense. So if I had to choose,
well, it actually does make sense from a philosophical perspective.
No, it doesn't, because you can still have limits to the choice, right? All of our rights have limits. This is how, like, I know you didn't go to law
which is
school.
exactly what I'm advocating for. Thank you, Jazmen.
Well, but okay, the reason our rights have limits is because you, like the harm principle, right? You can do whatever you want as long as you don't harm another individual. So you can go do what you want. But
what about when you harm society? What about when you harm generations to come
let me just also step in. So Jazmen, so what she's getting as a hypothetical, gun to your head, you have to pick one. There's no third choice. It's like, okay, you have to pick between 1,000 black people dying, 1,000 Asian people dying. Like, both of those are bad choices. Obviously, the first choice is no one dies, but let's say gun to your head.
So you're saying if I had to prescribe everybody be monogamous or everybody be polyamorous, what would I choose? I would choose monogamy in that instance, just because that's where most people fall. But I don't think societies flourish when we force everybody to fall into the majority when there are people who fall into the minority. So yes, I would, if I had to choose in this false dichotomy, I would be like, okay, fine, I guess I'd pick the one that most people would fall into. But I don't think it's better now that we have marginalized this smaller group of people who don't want to be that way, which is why
they're not marginalized. They have the same rights as everyone else. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
But if you tell people, oh, you should be monogamous, you ought to be monogamous, I don't think that's right. Just like you ought to be straight, or you ought to be X.
Okay, so here's another thing that's happening is that women are naturally more monogamous, but now there is a social push for women to not be prudish, to be more sexually promiscuous, to be more sexually open, and women are not naturally attuned to this. This is not women's natural inclination.
Some women.
I don't care about the exception to the rule. I'm talking about generally. I'm talking about what we can observe.
What percentage of women do you perceive? Because there's about 10 to 20% of women that do fall on the sexuality
and
scale.
Why are those promiscuous women dictating the rest of society of women who don't want to do that?
They're not. Nobody. Okay, this idea, you're the one saying that we ought to be this way. Nobody on my side. I never said you ought to be promiscuous. I never said
there is
definitely.
You are crazy if you don't think that there's a social push to be more open sexually. You're insane.
There is a social push to be more accepting.
So why is there this 10 to 20% of a community or our population trying to societally dictate against how most people want to have sex, how most people want the pair bond?
They're not. Do you not look at the GSS data of how many sexual partners people have? The majority of people, like 88% male and females, have sex with one person in 2022 or one person in 2021. The vast majority of people, their ability to be in a monogamous long-term relationship, which is what most people are doing, that they're still able to do that. All that's changed is that percentage of people that don't want to do that are able to do that, and they're just saying, hey, don't demonize us for it. And if you want to do this, do this. I think there's maybe a small amount of people that are like, this is what you should do. You should go sleep with whoever you want, and you should start an OnlyFans. And OnlyFans is sending, I guess, I don't think they're sending people emails or brochures like join our site. But some people want to do this.
There is an incentive program that you can create. You can make money off of people that you.
I don't know how. I mean, like maybe some people are making it's 1 year that you can make apparently like 5% of what someone else is make. And I don't know a single person. I don't use it. I don't know anyone that uses it. I don't think the majority of money on OnlyFans is being made from referrals.
Doesn't have to be the majority.
I think it's very, very small amount, especially because you only make that for a year. And most people, their first year on OnlyFans, unless they're super famous, don't even make that much money. So it's
great. But even if you're on Twitter and we see so many people on OnlyFans who do make quite a bit of money, who are now, showing off on social media what they have, what they've gotten through this. Obviously, that's going to look very delicious to someone like me who got into sex work at 18, who is living in my car.
You
Sure,
could, you
and
could,
that's
you could
bad
do
for
that with
society. That's
anything.
like,
You
and
could
now we see that the Black community especially is struggling because of their culture. So thank you for bringing that
No,
up.
but I would say like it's not just because of their culture. There's also a huge historical component as to why Black people are suffering. It's not 100% their culture. There's multiple variables.
Well,
that come
in a
into
time like
play.
now where they have social institutions put in place directly so that they could catch up with us, and they're still
But
not.
history matters.
That's
History
cultural.
matters. History matters. Black people have not
Wait,
been
history
able to
doesn't
do
matter when we're
things.
talking about it, whether or not
Yes.
monogamy is good for
All
society.
right, guys, let's get
No,
off
that-
people and go back to the OnlyFans discussion. Actually, here's an interesting question. Well, actually, I'll let you guys go at it. I wrote down a few questions for both of you, but you guys can keep going.
Yeah, well, just to piggyback off that, to say that history hasn't affected today, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but that doesn't mean that we should now revert back to history or do what was historically the norm just because it was. Because then
Just
in that
progress
argument,
for
we
the
might as
sake
well
of progress
historically go
then.
back to slavery because that's what we did historically. But to say that history has no
No.
effect is never what I said.
So
I
you're
never
just
said
you're
history
advocating
has
for
no effect.
progress for the sake of progress, even if it's non-conducive to our society and
Well,
maybe
tell me
even
how it's not conducive.
unhealthy.
Show me how society has gotten worse because we've allowed people to be gay, because we've allowed people to be polyamorous, because we've allowed people to do OnlyFans. Where is this collapse?
Well, well, I was just about to say is that I can show you evidence on how society becomes better when we instill Christian secular values.
Show me a society that was like doing
But
what we're doing. And
let
then
me
we
finish,
started doing
Jasmine.
it.
Please just even one thought. Thank you.
You've returned the same to me.
Okay.
Okay.
What we are going to see in the next, so this is very new. So since the 2000s, in the last maybe 15 20 years, things have really started to change. Things have really started to shift, where we're denying the nuclear family, and we're being anti-establishment. We're being very atheist. God has died in a lot of ways. People are leaving churches, whatever. We are going to see the consequences of that, not immediately, because it's never immediate, especially in our lifetimes, but obviously in the next generation and the generation after us, which I'm very confident about because we've seen spikes like this all throughout history. Positive spikes, negative spikes, and we can track it throughout our culture, throughout multiple different cultures. So I'm not to say that in the next 5 years, our life is going to be completely fucking different. We're going to be the poorest country ever. We're not going to be whatever. But we are going to see some serious consequences from sex work being so normalized, and from not being married being normalized, and from having children out of wedlock being normalized. That's going to have some very serious consequences for society in the long term.
Okay. Well, again, I would love to see a culture where the most religious cultures are the ones that are doing the worst. They have the most poverty. They're the most war torn. They're the most war stricken. And when you look at Nordic countries,
this isn't true about Christian.
I let you finish. I let you finish. Okay. Didn't I? Was I not fucking silent? Okay. I would love to see an example where you couldn't give me any other time in US history you wanted to be a woman other than now. So where is this like dip where all of a sudden when we shame this stuff more, where we started shaming it less and then we shamed it more and things got better for women? I don't see that at all. And everything you're saying about, the future, we're going to be so negatively impacted by people becoming
the smartest
religious.
we've ever
been. Not seeing let me finish. We're not seeing this in any other place in the world. We're seeing that the most westernized, the most weird, Western educated, individualistic, rich democracy, that's what weird societies and weird morality is all about. Those societies are doing better pretty much on every measure. And I would say that there's no evidence that societies that started going this way and then decided to backtrack the way you want us to started having any type of positive impact to that. So I would love to see an example.
Part of why we are doing so good is because of the values that our society and culture was shaped on. Okay.
Well, then as they're deteriorating, why are things not getting worse?
I'm telling you that they are. It's just going to take longer to see just how bad.
So 1960s or 1950s or 1920s, where those Judeo-Christian values were more prominent in our society, were not better times. And you know that. And now we're seeing that
but every year after that was better, right? So we lived in a progressive society. So we were able to create the most wealth, the most technology, the most industry, because of things.
So 1960s was better than today for women. Or just say that if that's what you think.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we create the building blocks for the next generation.
But
so
the
every building
block
block in the 1920s and the 1930s and the 1940s, focusing on the family, the baby boom, for example, was great for society. Now we're not even going to have things like social security because we're not having children. We're not going to have things like we're not going to have things like a heavy, prosperous workforce because we're not making enough kids to replace us and to create a booming economy. We're seeing things like literally in real time. We're seeing how this is affecting places like Korea, not having as many kids.
Building blocks are not always good. This country was built upon slavery and segregation around the same time, right? You can't be like, well, we don't know the effects of Jim Crow like being yet because it hasn't been enough time. No. We know that's not good. We know that telling women that they can't work. Or
I'm not.
They have
do you think at any point? Do you think at any point I said we need to go back in time?
When you're making an argument that
at
these
any
were the
point here have I said we need to go back
good,
in time
before they are, because these are the building blocks, therefore they are good and we should keep them there. I don't think this is a good argument because you could use that for a multitude of other things. You could use that for the gay rights movement. You could use that for the women's rights movement. You can use that for any movement because this is how it was until 10 minutes ago.
So you don't think that we should have kids?
I think that people should have kids when they want to have kids. I don't think that we should be a prescription on women to have children.
So if you had to create a social norm,
on anybody to be straight,
if you had to create a social norm,
anybody to be monogamous, huh?
If you had to create a social norm, now this is the second question that I'm going to ask
social
you
norm
the same
is freedom. That is the norm. The social norm is that as long as you're not harming anybody else, live your life.
Our social norm is not necessarily freedom. We have laws in America, even though our country is based on freedom. We still have
so why
a
don't
ton
we
of
enforce
laws.
monogamy? Why are you against enforcing it legally then? If you think this is so much better for society, why not enforce it through law?
Because I don't think that that's as useful as doing it through just social norms and pressure.
But we have laws, like you said, right? I want to know why then, if you think this is so much better for society.
I think it's more impactful to just instill those values.
If you want to make people stop doing something, you need to actually, if you start putting jail time in for people who aren't doing
I don't believe that again, this 10% to 20% of the population should be able to do whatever they want. I just don't want that to. I just don't want that the 10%, the outlier, to determine how we treat the rest of the world that is living in a way that is like.
I 100% agree with you. I 100% agree with you. That's why arguments.
So if you don't want to have children, you don't need to have children.
Arguments like we shouldn't accept homosexuality because it might influence others. No, if people aren't in polyamorous, they're not going to
how sexuality works.
Do it because I'm trying to make an analogy here. That's the whole point. That's what analogy is. Just because
you cannot compare having children.
No, I'm not talking about having children. My whole point is that percentage of people that doesn't want to do it, it is not better for society. If you're saying that the social norm should be that people who choose not to follow the majority because of whatever reason aren't actually making society worse. And I don't think that normalizing polyamory or saying that, hey, you 10 to 20%, you guys are fine. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your relationship. There's nothing wrong with the way you want to live your life. I don't think that is going to make more people polyamorous in a way that's going to lead to the downfall of society.
There is nothing wrong. Let me clarify.
People more likely to be gay, and did it make people more likely to contribute to the downfall of society?
Let me clarify that there is nothing wrong with 10 to 15% of a society doing what it wants to do, but there is something wrong when they dictate 100% of society, or when there's social pressure coming from that very small group to act against our best interest.
Okay, so what tell me how the polyamorous community is forcing anything onto you.
It's not the polyamorous community. It's just in general, like being anti-prudish, right? So now we have a lot of women talking about how I'm getting shamed in the bedroom because I'm not as adventurous, or I'm getting shamed in the bedroom because I'm getting shamed because I don't want my husband to watch porn, or I'm getting shamed because I want to get married young, or I'm getting shamed because I want to have children, or because there is a very small amount of the culture.
Yeah, and for every one of those women, there are 10 more women who are still getting shamed because they're 30 and they don't have kids, or that they are on OnlyFans, or that they want to be promiscuous. That is still happening. I don't think either one should be shamed. That's my point. Neither one should be shamed. Sex work shouldn't be shamed. Polyamory shouldn't be shamed. And monogamy and trad. And I personally do OnlyFans, but I don't have casual sex because I don't like it. And that's me. But that doesn't mean that I have friends that are completely temperamentally different than me, that are completely different than me in a lot of ways, that choose to live that life. Like my whole point is neither one of those should be shamed. But I don't think you can make an argument that the shame is going greater in the direction of people who want to be monogamous and the norm versus that the shame, just because the shame has started to lift a little bit on the minorities, doesn't mean that the majority is being threatened in any way. The polyamorous people, the OnlyFans girls, the promiscuous women, they are not affecting Joanne's ability, who's a Christian, who goes to church every Sunday. She's free to have kids and she's free to do what you want. We're not knocking at her door being like, why are you not doing porn? Why are you not doing this? That's not happening.
I never said that was happening in
So
particular.
you're saying this anti-prudish culture, which I agree with you. I just don't think it's as widespread of an issue as you think it is. Most people who want to get married and have kids are still... Okay, well,
so there are people like you who are like individualistic and is like progress for the sake of progress. Yeah, I have.
Well, no, if your whole argument
so
is
you're
that
thinking exactly in the present moment. You're thinking exactly what everyone wants and will make everyone happy right now. I'm thinking about future generations and how.
If your argument is that we haven't seen anything really terrible happen yet, but I think that down the line this is going to happen. Okay, well, wait.
There is
evidence to suggest
it's not. I think it's that there is evidence to suggest that this will be bad.
Let me just quickly clarify. I think what the distinction is, so you can stop me if I'm wrong. It seems like Jazmen takes a highly individualistic approach. So it's like, hey, if there's not immediate harm, then it's okay. It's like very much a libertarian approach versus it sounds like Lav, you take more of a collectivism approach, right? You were like, yeah, individualism is good, but we need to also focus on the collective good. That seems to
I would add that my argument is that collectivist cultures don't seem to be doing better than individualistic cultures in modern society in any way.
I don't like, okay. I don't know how to describe to you that America has been a collectivist culture and that we are doing.
We are
I don't know how to describe
on the idea of individual rights and freedom and having rights that cannot be abridged.
Even though that exists. Okay, but do you think that we haven't been Christian throughout all of it? Do you think that we have not been a mostly Christian society throughout all of that?
We might have been a mostly Christian society, but we were becoming less.
We
and
might
less
have
Christian.
been.
And I guess your argument here is that societies that are less and less Christian, or societies that are more secular, are somehow worse off. Give me an example. Tell me a society that you think is better to live in right now that is more collectivist. Because in America's, if you compare most countries in the world right now, America.
So you are living off of. You are trying to make an argument of extremes. You are trying to make an argument of extremes.
I
don't believe in a full. I don't believe in a fully collectivist culture. I don't believe
that is more collectivist than here that you think is better. Can you answer that? I answered.
I don't want to live anywhere else. I like how things have been going. I don't like where they're trending towards.
Okay, and your idea is that down the line we might see some negative consequences to this. Although
it's not down the line we might. It's not down the line we might. There is incredible evidence to see
something. One of the things I believe that is so quintessential to the United States is protecting minorities, whether that's a minority sexual orientation, a minority race. That's like saying we're a white country just because most of the people are white and this should be the norm. It shouldn't be the norm. The norm is that even though most people are white,
we've seen crime rates go up through taking in immigrants from other countries. Like we have.
What was that?
We've seen crime rates go up while taking in immigrants from other countries.
If you want to get into that discussion, we could. If you're anti-immigration and you're anti-melting pot, etc., we can have that discussion. But it seems like a lot of the things
not even anti. I just think that there's a happy medium.
I agree too. I'm not saying we should have completely open borders, but I would say like people like my parents who came to this country, even though their daughter, I guess, is an online internet, like my mom's a lawyer, my dad's an engineer, and we've contributed very great things to the country. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't have restrictions on immigration, but I would say part of what makes America the greatest country is that we allowed a lot of people from different backgrounds, different cultures, etc., to come here, and we gave everybody individual rights.
And they usually assimilate.
Cannot be. And that we gave people individual rights that cannot be abridged, and that this general,
and they assimilate to our Western values.
But a lot of I'm sorry, Western values. So you think Western values is monogamy, but that's not part of Eastern
monogamy,
culture?
Gender equality, the thirst for knowledge, capitalism, free markets.
Monogamy, socially enforced monogamy is stronger in non-individualistic cultures as opposed to ours. So nobody's coming to the United States because they're like, you know what? If you look at, what do you mean, like where? I just like all of the Middle East. If you even go into Hispanic culture,
and they're doing good. The Middle East is doing good.
That's my fucking point. My fucking point is that in places where monogamy is strictly enforced.
Wait. Hold on. Because culturally, in places like the Middle East, having multiple wives, or places like Africa, having multiple wives or multiple girlfriends is actually like
That's not the norm. You want to know the percentage of people in Iran who have multiple wives? It's like 0.3%. Most people in those countries do not have multiple wives. There's not a
I
country.
think she's talking more about like South America, Central America, Europe.
Even that, like South America, Central America, they believe in the family and the nuclear family and marriage and all of that more than we do. Nobody from South America is like,
not more than we do.
We're just not valuing monogamy enough here. Let me go to the United States where they do that. That's not why they're coming here. They're not coming here so that they can have Judeo-Christian values and have.
No, they're coming here so they can enjoy the fruits of our building blocks,
the freedom and individualism. That's one of the reasons that a lot of people come here.
Okay,
they want
I don't.
This is America. Freedom is a cornerstone of what
freedom is
America,
a concept. Freedom is a concept that also counteracts with a lot of American values, right? Like having laws against polyamory, or having laws against having sex with animals, or against having sex with inanimate objects or your cousin, right? Like there are some things where, even though we live in a free country, libertarianism, woohoo, there are some things that we even have to say, okay, we're actually going to put a little bit of either a social or a legislative pause on a lot of this stuff, but what about freedom? Are we not a free society?
That's the whole point. Even though we were free, a lot of our country, a lot of the people, especially if they were minorities, weren't free, right? For a long time, like things like sodomy was not allowed. You were not free at that time to commit. That doesn't mean that changes the underpinning of U.S. culture. I think that was wrong. I guess the difference is some people think no-fault divorce, sodomy, etc., abortion, all of that should still be illegal, and they want to take away those freedoms. But there are other people like me who are like, no, actually, people want to engage in sodomy or any type of relationship. That should be okay. We're going to have disagreements on where the line is drawn, but I don't think that because the line is drawn anywhere, it means that freedom is not something that the United States cares about more than other countries, because we do. We, as an individualistic culture, we do care more about the individual than if we look at more collectivist cultures and freedom than they do. And I think that's good. I think we can see that's good because people want to move to the countries that are more like us instead of the countries that are more like that.
Okay, I'm getting lost in this conversation because that was like a lot of yapping for like something that like we like literally already just talked about.
Okay, then we can move on. But I mean, you were going.
Well, no, it just I don't know. You're first of all, one, you're shadowboxing and creating arguments that I don't have, and two, we know that that multiple things can exist at once. So we are a free society, and also there are some limitations, right? And also that social shaping has done a lot for society, because even though we've been a free society, we've been a mostly Christian society throughout all of history while we've been extremely free. So those are building blocks.
And less and less Christian, and I don't think that has made us worse in any way.
Through education.
Education actually is a big predictor of becoming less religious, which I don't think is a bad thing. There's a reason that
I don't think it's
more intelligent people and more educated people are less likely to be religious. I don't think this is a bad thing. And countries that are richer and more educated are less likely to be religious. I just don't understand how shifting as a society to accepting things like different types of sexualities or different types of relationships has made us
if your whole platform is based on stop being mean to people,
we still are the nations that everybody wants to go to. There's nothing about nations that we see that enforce this stuff more, that care about the nuclear family more, that people want to go to. People want to come here, and they want to come here, especially one of those reasons is that we are a society that has become progressively more accepting of people who want to live their lives in a different way than we do. If that's not something you're into,
I understand your argument at this point. You've said it 18,000 different times.
You've said the same thing 18 times too, Lav. I'm just responding to the same. You're making the same arguments. I'm making the same arguments back. It's not one-sided here.
No, but you're shadowboxing with me.
Right, Lav,
if your whole argument is don't shame people, I disagree.
Wait, what?
Lav,
sorry, Alex.
Which one of your positions do you feel Jazmen is miscategorizing?
I mean, I'm not even. It's hard for me to even follow the conversation because she talks so much, but not even about like. I don't. She's making.
Can you answer his question? Know. You don't know what position
like I said, I'm getting lost in the conversation because you just yap. Like I don't know even where we are. Like you're fighting me by saying that I'm like
let me break it down for you. Let me break it down for you then, okay? Do you want me to explain how I could try to go slower.
No, I don't. I think that we should. I think that we should move on.
But you're not
because
telling me
I think
what
we're getting
position of yours
stuck.
I'm mischaracterizing, and you're not letting me break down.
Okay, let me jump in. Lav, so is there anything you can think of where you're like, yo, Jazmen is attributing positions or arguments to me that I don't have? Is there anything?
Yeah, so like one, I don't want to create legislation. I don't want to do anything but like but create like social norms against or social norms towards having like a healthy society that is like monogamous and focused on the nuclear family, right? Like I want that to not just be a conservative talking point. I want that to be a leftist talking point too, because that's good for everyone in the US. I don't even want to necessarily like do anything bad to like the polyamorous or person doing sex work. I don't think that we should like put these people in jail or like society like socially ostracize them or like take away their rights in any way. I just think that positive reinforcement is what my platform is. Like I want to positively reinforce a nuclear family instead of like that's what I care about more than like shaming people. I don't really care about how someone else lives. I just want to make sure that like the most amount of people are at least hearing like positive enforcement for the nuclear family, because I believe in a nuclear
and I
family.
think where we disagree is that I think that gay people or polyamorous people should also have positive reinforcement. No, we talked about positive reinforcement. Am I doing something? Am I like losing my mind, Alex? Like, am I not just answering her point?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay. Because my whole point here where I disagree with you is I don't see, first of all, one thing is I don't see there are a lot of cultures that follow your social norms more strictly that don't tend to be better off than ours. And I would say that people who don't follow what you think is good for
the 10%, the 10 to 15% of anti-establishment should say that way.
You gotta let me finish. Whether it's 10%, whether it's 20%, the whole point is that you shouldn't only positively reinforce, let's say, the 90% that's monogamous and not the 10%. I want to positively reinforce everybody that's not harming anybody else by living a lifestyle that is most conducive to their happiness and who they are. And unless you can show me that 10% is fucking up the rest of society, I don't understand why that wouldn't also be your position. If that 10% is now happier and they're not making the 90% less happy, which you haven't shown me any evidence that they are, or they're not contributing to something that's terrible, unless you're speculating for down the line, which I'd be eager to see, I don't understand why that would be your position. Why can't we just let that 10% and give them the reinforcement they deserve too, especially after being marginalized for so long?
Okay, I personally understand both of your arguments. So if there's any clarifications needed, you can ask me. Okay, respond, Lav.
I think that the 10 to 15% of society should be free to do what they want.
But you think we should prescribe the 90%?
Jazmen,
Okay.
Let her finish.
My values that are conducive with having a safe, happy, economically prosperous America are conducive with monogamy, and so I will socially positively reinforce things that are conducive to monogamy in a nuclear family.
Can you explain to me how polyamory makes America less economically prosperous?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I really don't want to trigger you. I'm actually curious. Like, I don't think that.
Let's let her answer.
So one, part of why a lot of men get their shit together and have good jobs is for the opportunity to impress a mate or to get a wife who is willing to give them children, right? When men have less incentive to achieve through things like having a family, a lot of them will fall through the cracks. We see this in the Black community. We see this in America in general. We see this in communities outside of America. This is just true. A lot of this has to do with breeding strategy in general. So that's one thing. Also, when one man has a lot of children by multiple different mothers, he's having to pay for multiple different children by multiple different mothers and having to provide for multiple different families. That's not economically prosperous. Also, if children were a man and where a husband and a wife are in the home, do better in school, they get better jobs. Their outcomes are better in general. And so if we were trying to create a society that encourages stuff like that or tries to have the best outcomes for children, we're going to enforce a society that has two parents in the home, a mother and a father, still married together.
I would say that maternal education is actually the #1 predictor of childhood outcomes. So if anything, you should be telling women to go get their shit together and get educated. I don't think men are like just most people get jobs, and I do agree with you, but it is just harder.
More so, you think more so than a father being in the home?
Yeah, maternal education and socioeconomic status are the two big, and maternal education is actually #1. I can link the study that shows this are the biggest predictors of childhood success, more than paternal education, actually. Maternal education largely contributes to how well your child does in school, literacy rates, math, science, everything. So maternal education is something that if you're pushing for anything, for better outcomes for children, that would be it. And there's it's not as easy to be a homeowner at 30 anymore as it used to be. I don't think that is because of polyamory or that men don't have an incentive to I guess mate with women anymore. Everybody wants a good life. Most Americans don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck, and that has nothing to do with men just not pursuing more because because now they can be polyamorous. I don't think that's happening, especially because that's not where the majority of people even lie. The majority of people still lie, like you said, in this monogamous traditional relationship. I don't think that like casual hookups or casual sex or hookup culture has had negative impacts on the economy. And if that you're making that argument, I would love to see some evidence for it. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, here's the study that I'm going to put in the side chat. It's multiple pages, so let me find some.
Okay, we'll pull it.
But summary, marriage between two parents compared with other family living arrangements appears on average to enhance children's well-being and development. Some of the positive association between marriage and children's well-being comes from positive associations between marriage and other things that also contribute to children's well-being. David Ribart first sets up a standard economic rational choice model to show that all else equal, marriage should produce advantages that can improve children's well-being, such as better coordination between parents, economies of scale that make limited resources go further. Digging more deeply, he then examines specific mechanisms through which marriage may operate to improve children's lives. Some of these have been well studied, including income, father's involvement, parents' physical and mental health, parenting quality, social supports, health insurance, home ownership, parents' relationships, bargaining power, and family stability. Others have perceived less attention, including net wealth, borrowing constraints, and informal insurance through social networks. Many of these mechanisms can be bolstered by public policy. That is, when they are lacking in children's lives, public policy could potentially provide substitutes, greater cash assistance, more generous health insurance, better housing, more help for caregivers, whatever. Okay, obviously, I believe in all those things.
Can you isolate, because this is the thing, right? Correlation versus causation. People who tend to have children out of wedlock. Then nothing that you have brought up matters either. I let you rant. So children.
None of your studies matter either. None of your studies matter either.
Wait, Lav,
I'm not saying your study doesn't matter, Lav. I'm saying that it's not measured. It's not
none of your
study is not.
So you're saying nothing is real. Like we don't have any proof to anything, and we should just vibe.
Idiot. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that those studies aren't real. I'm saying that it's also likely that people who have children out of wedlock, single mothers, are more likely to be less educated, more likely to have lower socioeconomic status, etc. Right. It's not just the impact. Like if you look at co-parenting relationships or even single mothers who have like my level of education, you don't see any of this. So I'm not saying that, people that we shouldn't be pushing. If anything, I'm saying that the disagreement I have with you is if we're going to look at childhood outcomes, we should be pushing more education for women because that is a bigger predictor. And I can sit and pull up and read studies if you want to do that as well. I'm not saying that that people who want to have
not a good predictor.
It is. You're not saying it's not maternal education is not a good predictor. Okay, let's
no,
see.
I'm not saying that that's not a good predictor.
Okay, that is actually the biggest predictor. So when you're looking at a group of people who is most likely to be least educated,
I think but you're talking about a tiny population that is women who are extremely rich and extremely educated, who don't have to deal with normal society, that are having children via insemination.
It's not just that the most extreme.
When we talk about the most, Jazmen,
literally when we talk education about levels and childhood outcomes for mothers goes like this. So yes, the people at the top are doing really well, but the people who are more educated than the people below that are doing really well.
You're talking about a small amount of people who are doing very, very well. That is not the average. So I'm talking about the most amount of people who are going to do.
I'm not talking about a small percentage of people. This is how it works, right? The more educated you are, it's not just that the most educated are doing well. Person who has a college degree, person who has some level of schooling does better than person who has nothing. And it is not just a very, very small percentage of women who go to college anymore. In fact, the education gap has completely reversed.
No, that's not. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. I like can't. You're taking like a little bit of my argument and making it like. I mean, you're.
This is. Let me break it down for you. You're saying, look at all these terrible things that happen when children are born out of wedlock. I'm saying that when we measure for those things, the people
communities and cultures do worse when people have children out of wedlock. True or false?
Well, it's hard to say because you're saying
no, it's not. No, it's not. Do communities do worse when they have children out of wedlock?
I'm going to say false because if you go to other places in the world where almost nobody is born out of wedlock, those children are not doing any better than we are. So I would say that's false.
Okay.
You can't tell.
If we're not willing to engage with reality, I genuinely
give me a country where children are less likely to be born out of wedlock that it's doing better than we are.
White people in America. White people in America. Latinos in America, Nigerians in America.
No.
Those people.
I'm saying name a place where people.
I'm naming in America. Communities do better when they stop having children out of wedlock.
I really don't want to be an asshole and bring up like that you just aren't educated, but this is how it works, right? You're looking at the same community. You're looking at a black person who is let's say a single mother versus somebody who went to school and got an education. But you're talking about cultures, right? And I'm talking when you look at those stats in individuals, like you look at a Hispanic family that's better off. Hispanic family.
Do communities do better?
Family is more likely to
do communities do better?
And that's my whole
Jazmen,
point. But if you look
do
at the
communities do better when they have children out of wedlock?
Those effects dissipate. That's my whole point.
Jazmen, so generally, on a general population scale, answer my question. Generally, do communities do communities do better when they have children out of wedlock?
Not when you measure for maternal education.
The answer is no. The answer
not
is
when you
no.
measure for those things. When you're looking at a community that doesn't have those things, and they're more likely to not have those things, that makes no fucking sense. Of course, if you're looking at people who are also really, really poor, and you're being like, okay, well, they're also more likely to not have children out of wedlock, and be like, look, if you have children out of wedlock, well, yeah, you're also way more likely to be poor and way more likely to be not educated.
Lav, you have to ask the question in a different way. Let me try to. I understand what you're trying to get at. So the question would be like this: if you take people of the same income status, same education, same everything, 10,000 who had kids out of wedlock, 10,000 who did not, which one of them do you think is more likely to do better? So if you isolate for every factor, that's I think.
If you isolate for every factor, I would say, but like. Do the children who are not born in wedlock still have like social support and resources, or no? Is it just like one parent versus
the exact same? It's the exact same for both.
I would say the only study I've seen, adolescent boys seem to be a group where they really benefit from having a male father figure isolated from all those other factors. But I haven't seen this be the case that if we're all factors are the same, income's the same, resources are the same, and there's co-parenting or there's not a nuclear family, that I haven't seen any evidence to show that those children end up doing worse. The only thing I've seen that really isolates just having a father married to the mother in the home is for adolescent boys, like ages 11 to 14, 15.
If you can show me a study that says that that's the truth, then I'll believe you.
I mean, sure. So you want to see a study that shows that single motherhood rates?
It just affects teenage boys having
having
children.
I can show you a study that shows that the negative.
This is what you do. You answer a question and then you do like
a study that shows that the negative impacts of single motherhood, once you adjust for things like socioeconomic status, etc., those more likely to be a criminal, more likely to do bad in school, those things go away. Which, and I can show you that the two biggest predictors of childhood success are socioeconomic status and maternal education. Now, it is if you are poor and you are living in a community that doesn't have those things, you are also more likely to being a single parent. So therefore, there's a selection bias here because everybody who's a single parent is more likely to be XYZ. So yeah, their kids, oh my God, look, their kids are so much more likely to go to jail. They're so much more, because they're also more likely to be poor and uneducated. That's my fucking point.
So you're saying that children do better when both parents?
I didn't say children do better. I just said that.
So you think that children do worse?
Nuclear family. I don't think
that children do worse.
I don't think the nuclear family is the thing the thing that's being better for children. I think it's a multitude of variables, and that I don't think that two parents living in the house married is necessarily a huge predictor, all things being equal, of childhood success. I think that if you have a parent who is a single parent who has strong community, who has a ton of resources, their children have the same level of education, all of that, and you take Billy Bob down the street who has a mom and a dad, but also has a ton of education, also has a ton of resources, I don't think that this kid is going to do worse than that kid necessarily. But we can move on. I mean, it's been 2 hours. I don't know if this is.
I'm actually good. I'm enjoying this debate so much that I'm gonna skip the birthday dinner. Here's another. Here's another thing, actually, that.
So in America, so let's just talk about this for a second. So as around 44% of Americans, 25.
Because you said it would be an hour and a half. I do have to go in 7 minutes, so I don't know if like at 8. Because I planned for just till 7:30. I'm in Arizona time, so
I got you.
I don't know.
Let me ask this question real quick.
Hold on.
Wait, hang on.
In America, because you're talking about the predictor of child outcomes with just education, and you're talking about, and I agree with you in certain cases, but the problem with your statistics and when you bring up statistics is you're bringing up a microcosm of a bigger general population, right? So right now, 44% of Americans 25 or older have attended college and completed their degree programs. So that is the minority, and we know that college education is less people are going to college than ever before. Because it's expensive, right? So if more people are less educated, and if we live in a society where more people are less educated and they don't have access to wealth and they don't have access to education, we're going to say, you guys should probably get married, because that is something that predicts good outcomes in your children, right?
Okay, if you want to give a prescription just to those people versus the entire society, I would still say
general
good
population. What do you not understand about general population?
You just said something, and I agree with you. The expensive part is a shitty part, and it's really hard for people to do as well. College education is one of the best things you can do when it comes to career outcomes, relationships. Your divorce rates go down a lot. So sure, you could be like, oh yeah, less and less people are getting.
Why would you prescribe people to go to college?
Yeah,
why would you prescribe people? What if people don't want to go to college?
I'm saying that it's you are somebody.
We should create a social norm around college.
No,
why would you do that? A lot of people don't want to do that.
I'm not you, Lav. That's why I don't tell people to go to college. But if you go to college, you tend to have these greater outcomes. But
we just shouldn't give advice to anyone. We shouldn't try to positively impact people at all.
I don't think you should go to college. I don't think it's for you. Like I wouldn't say that to you, right?
We shouldn't try to positively influence outcomes at all. At all.
What do you mean?
Why would we? We live in America. This is a free fucking country.
I don't think college is for everybody, but you do tend to have better outcomes when you go to college. But that doesn't mean I make it a prescription, or that I give people who go to college positive reinforcement at the expense of those who don't. Like, I think for some people, going into trade school is a really good idea. I think for other people, going straight into an apprenticeship is a good idea.
What's the expense?
People are very different, huh?
What's the expense? Well, you said at the expense. What's the expense?
We
shouldn't give people positive outcomes at the expense. So what is the expense in this scenario?
We prescribe a social norm towards monogamy, and that is what's morally superior. That is coming at.
I didn't say morally superior. I actually clarified multiple times. I'm not arguing from a morally objective standpoint.
What are you prescribing? Give me what your prescription is about monogamy to people.
I think that we do better in monogamous societies, so we should positively enforce monogamy, just as we should positively enforce women having educations and jobs and everyone going to college, and we should positively reinforce not doing drugs, and we should positively reinforce children going to school at a young age, obviously, like all the way from K-12. We should positively influence a nuclear family, a father staying in the home. We should positively influence not having children out of wedlock. Like, these are all things that we should.
Everybody, I would never saying that, we should positively enforce going to college, so everybody should go to college if they can. I don't think that. That's the difference. We shouldn't, and monogamy is better, so everyone should be monogamous. I don't think that. That's the difference. I wouldn't prescribe a education for everybody. It depends on who you are and your circumstances. College doesn't make sense for everyone. You could say bachelor, PhDs or doctorate degrees like I have, end up having far better outcomes. I would never tell everyone that we should positively enforce law degrees and say that we should try to get everybody to do this. It's not right for everybody. And I think a society that allows people options
I don't think that we shouldn't allow people options. I don't believe in legislating any of this.
Okay,
You should have the
we have
You
very
should allow people
guys,
social options, too.
stop. We have very limited time. I do want to get this one question out of the way because I wrote it down for 2 hours. So in actually Lav's, I think, first 10 minutes, she mentioned something about how OnlyFans culture and sex work actually makes rape more socially acceptable, I believe, or something along the lines of that. So how would you respond to that, Jazmen?
I don't think there's any evidence that OnlyFans has made rape more socially acceptable. Rape has become less and less socially acceptable through things like the sexual revolution, through things like outlawing marital rape, through things like putting more of an emphasis on consent. And that has coincided with us being
There's actually more rape on college campuses than ever before.
Well, this is my point, though, but it's also really frowned upon. Like we haven't created more
Doesn't
of
matter
a
if it's
culture
frowned
where
upon.
this is okay. This is why we had the whole entire Me Too movement. And I don't think that is on accident, that we had, like I said in the beginning, that we've been more cognizant of those things. So if you're going to tell me that OnlyFans has somehow made people think rape is more okay.
I don't think it's a one-to-one.
Hmm?
I don't think it's a one-to-one.
Okay. Well, I think that right now is a time where women more than ever probably feel like, those things that used to be so popular of, oh, you were raped, what were you wearing? We have as a society chosen to be like, this is not okay. We have chosen as a society to say it doesn't matter.
But then you make your body. What happens? Okay, so if sex work is normalized and a prostitute is selling the product, what happens when someone takes it? What happens when someone takes what they're paid for? What happens if a prostitute says, I don't want to do this, and they just take the product, which is sex? What is that then?
And
is that a property crime or is that
no, that is not a property crime because it's still your bodily autonomy, and that is why
you can't have it both ways.
And I hope
you can't have it both ways.
That sex workers and
you cannot have it both ways.
Have actually shifted for.
You can't say the body is different. You can't say the body is different. Sex is different, and then also say it's exactly the same.
Let me finish. I didn't say
you cannot have your cake and eat it.
I said that autonomy and choice is the key thing here. So when someone takes that from you,
do you think most people in the sex trade are doing it autonomously?
A lot of OnlyFans, yes.
Do you think most people in the sex trade are doing it autonomously?
I'm not talking about fentanyl addicted prostitutes on Skid Row, but I would say most of the people who join OnlyFans are doing so by choice. I don't think they're.
Do you think they're doing it? Do you think they're doing it in the same way that you chose to do it, which is that you already had money, already come from a good family, or do you think they're choosing to do it because they're down and out? Because we saw huge amounts of women enter OnlyFans when they could not pay their bills.
All people from so many different
people who are not getting paid enough and cannot pay their bills on their income.
Yeah,
people who are need. So what is autonomy at this point? What is autonomy if you're forced and coerced into it? What is autonomy?
Choice. People should still be free to choose the best choice. And for a lot of people, they're thinking this is the best choice. It might have not been the best choice for you. You are also not the average woman. Don't you have like some type of I'm not trying to be mean, but the point is that I don't think you are also the average woman. And just because you had this
I am the average sex worker, and that I am mentally ill, and that I have poor outcomes doing sex work. I have poorer outcomes in doing sex work.
I don't know if we can talk about, this is the thing. If we're talking about street-based sex work versus something like OnlyFans, those are very different
OnlyFans girls
things.
are still mentally ill. And again, I want you to answer.
So are lawyers.
What is autonomy? What is choice? What is choice? If you are, so I genuinely want to know your opinion on this. So if you have a landlord, if you're like a 17-year-old girl that's like emancipated from her family and living in an apartment, and you're a landlord and you can't make your rent this month, and your landlord says, well, you could just give me a blowjob. And the girl's like, well, I want to pay my rent. I'm going to make the choice to give you this blowjob. I'm going to consent maybe to give you this blowjob. Is that
imbalance
ethical?
of power? I also don't think a landlord can be like, hey, want to scrub my toilet instead of paying rent? Like it has nothing to do with
that. But that's much. You'd much rather scrub a toilet than give a blowjob. And why is that?
I don't think either. I think the landlord is abusing his position of power in both scenarios. Or a landlord being like, hey, can you sit there while I call you a piece of shit? Like nothing sexual. Or can you come and scrub my toilet? Whatever. There's things that aren't acceptable because of the power imbalance. But I think it should be okay if a landlord says, hey, I'll exchange sex for you living here, and both parties agree to it, and both parties are able to say no if they want. And
if someone cannot pay their rent,
What does this have to do with
coercive?
Real quick.
That's rape. What does it have to do with OnlyFans? So what does this scenario have to do with OnlyFans?
Real quick. Couldn't you make that argument for any shitty job, like working in a coal mine,
Literally,
or being a janitor, or like any shitty job that person takes?
If you act like sex is not different than these things, I don't know what to tell you.
it's different
Sex
for
is
you. It's
Oh my
different
God.
for you. You clearly had this experience and now you want to go and you're like marriage and monogamy. Good for you. No one's stopping you from doing that. And I don't think it's wrong of you to share your experiences because some people are more like you and there are some women that are more like me. The difference is I'm not telling you that what you're doing is wrong or inferior to what I'm doing. You're the one telling us that.
Nope.
You're the one saying that
Didn't
we're
tell you
damaging
inferior.
society. Huh? But you're saying we're
Never said
damaging
inferior.
society and you're not.
Let's let Lav respond to that real quick.
If you're going to try to act like sex is not different than any other thing that we do as humans, I don't know how to interact with you in this. We know that sex is different. It feels different. We don't even know why. It just feels different.
Can we just pivot back to OnlyFans? No one's even having, you're not even having sex on OnlyFans. You're doing your solo creator, you're taking pictures of your titties. How does this have to do with landlords and sex and this and that? If a girl is
making
doing
your
what
body
I'm
a product, it's normalizing a behavior. It's late stage capitalism.
show me
It's
how this is
normalizing a
more
behavior that is
normalized.
making.
Show me how it's become. So what? So if this is normalizing something and it's making things worse, where is it worse? Where are men treating women worse than they did in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, or even before the 1990s, before the proliferation of
Not even the argument that I'm making. I didn't even make that argument.
So okay, you're
you're trying to find my argument. I don't think that you understand what I'm saying.
Because your OnlyFans is bad because it's normalizing selling somebody's body. Okay, now that that's become more normalized, what's happened?
It puts women in potentially unsafe positions.
But OnlyFans has made sex work safer.
Maybe.
So then how does that even... It doesn't seem to be making things worse for sex workers. It's not like
it also makes it harder for women to get married, to find jobs. It's going to be extremely I mean, I don't even want to think about how the outcomes will be on the next generation, our children, to have their mothers' naked photos all over online. I know that that scares the shit out of me.
This is the thing. 10 to 15 years
if you
from
think
now,
that
we
the
have
body
no
is not
idea.
going to be sacred in 10 years, if you think that we're going to have different thoughts on sexuality in 10 years, that it's going to be less sacred.
We have different thoughts on sexuality from 10 years ago. So yes, I believe that because we've changed our opinion on sexuality in the last 10 years, in the last 20 years, in the last 30 years. We've changed a lot. So I would believe that we would also continue to change our perspectives because as a culture, our social attitudes shift. They've shifted with the gay community. They've shifted with sex work. They've shifted with this. And you're
just thinking that this is another progressive talking point. So you just think like gay, trans, sex work. You go down the line of progressive talking points, and you're like, this is all progress for the sake of progress. Some of these things aren't progressive.
Your argument is that social attitudes won't change, and then I brought all those up to give you examples of how social attitudes change.
Okay, but there is such thing as evolutionary psychology, and men don't want to have sex with someone or marry someone where they think that their children could possibly not be theirs, or that they're not going to pair bond easily, right? So if you have someone who is doing sex work, it's like I don't know what to tell you. If we make it so that women are more socially accepted to have multiple partners, men's ideas on choosing a mate are not going to change. That's evolutionary psychology.
Can we talk about OnlyFans for a second? Because this is what this debate is on. If it's okay for women to get on the internet, and I agree, some men won't like that. So then find someone who aligns with your values. I always tell the story. I used to have no social media. I didn't have anything.
So there are only so many men who don't care about this, and women are going to have a hard time finding husbands.
It's really hot that you don't have social media, that you're not showing off your body. I ghosted that guy because I'm like, ew, I don't align with this guy. There are different kinds of people. People who share your values are the people that you should mate with. And sex workers do end up in relationships, in marriages. This idea that no one wants to marry you if you do this, or that you ruin your chances of XYZ is just not true, especially as social attitudes shift.
It is
just like
we've
shifted with things like gay people adopting children, even being gay. Depending on where you are, like if you're in the middle of Los Angeles,
is just like being gay.
When you think about it, in 10 to 15 years, you have no idea what the social attitudes towards sex work would be. But a good guess is that they're going to continue progressing along the lines that they're progressing. I don't think we see anything coming.
I'd like to get one guest on. Jazmen, do you have like 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, I could probably go to like 10 more minutes.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So first, I want to check if any of you ladies have an issue with him because he's kind of he's a character. So it's Ben Thorpe. Is there
No,
any?
I don't. No, I don't want to talk to Ben Thorpe.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, Ben.
I don't know who that is.
Sorry, Ben. I told you I was going to ask the girls. Sorry, buddy. All right, you can keep going, I guess.
Who's Smashley XOXO?
She's a friend of mine. Do you have any issues with her?
No, I'm saying that I'm reading the private chat, so I wanted she asked if she can come up for a few.
Yeah. You cool with her, Lav? You don't have any issues with her?
No.
Okay, let's bring her on. All right, Ashley, let's keep it semi-respectful. All right, here you are.
Hey, I've behaved for the last year, Alex. Come on now. Give me a break.
Well, you have your moments, but
you know. I had a few questions for Lav. If that's okay with Lav.
Yeah, go for it.
So Lav, I was on a debate panel with you about a year ago, and you were kind of saying a lot of the same things you're saying now. And I'll be honest with you, I agree with a lot of your talking points over Jazmen's tonight. No offense, Jazmen. I actually think you're way more intelligent, to be quite honest. But I agree with a lot more of Lav's talking points tonight. But I do find it funny because a couple of talking points that you've had, which is you've specifically said, you're kind of promoting the monogamy. You're talking about, the nuclear family, so on and so forth. And when I was on that debate panel with you last year on Modern Day Debate, you had a fiance at the time. And then I saw you like a few months later, and you were crying. And this is on a one of those other. It's not YouTube,
Ashley,
but
okay, let me stop you for a second. I've been
so
very
you
honest about how
you cheated on your fiance.
No,
and,
I did not cheat on my fiance.
You said that, and then you also engaged in a weird, like pseudo-sexual pedophilic type relationship with Mr. Girl that was kind of odd.
Okay, this is fucking ridiculous.
But I have one more question for you. One more question.
No. I'm not going to let you ask it. I'm not going to let you ask it. One.
Okay, well, I'll just
I have been very open about how I have tried an open relationship because I am in a successful relationship, and it was just something that we wanted to do before we got married. We were like, if this works, maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. We don't have children.
I screen recorded clips of you.
Isn't that worse for society? Isn't that worse for society, Lav? Isn't that you being individualistic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait. Yes. And
I just thought it was interesting.
Hold the fuck on. Also, we're in a different social caste than most of the fucking world. Okay. So we can get away with things that the average person would not get away with. I'm not going to prescribe my situation in a place where most people would not benefit from my situation because they don't have the same means as me. They don't have the same life as me in general, right? But what I will do is advocate for
hold on, Jasmine. I have one more question for her.
Hang on.
My bad.
Hang on. Let's let
what I will do is advocate for the most people, and the most people do not have my income or my life. So when I'm making a prescription for general population,
you made like $200,000 on OnlyFans in 1 year. Oh, sorry.
Just let her finish, and then
I made $300,000 a year, and my partner is a business owner. So we make quite a bit of money. We are not going to deal with the same circumstance as the general population in America. So I'm prescribing for something. It's going to be different. I have the luxury of being able to have a very different life than most of society. And yes,
so
exactly.
Prescriptions for poor people? Are
middle class? I have one more question, and it's a genuine question, if I may.
Is that harming society by people who make I make a lot of money?
Jasmine, if I may, I have one more question. I really do. It was another thing you mentioned on that debate panel with me last year, Lav. You're talking about OnlyFans, and at that time too, you were saying the same thing again. Like you kind of left that behind, and I respect that. Genuinely, like I'm happy for you. And I also
support. You saying that no, I don't want to talk to you anymore. You saying that I cheated on my husband? I mean, and then saying that I engaged in a pedophilic relationship.
I'm not saying that you said it. I'm sorry, but one more question.
I'm not. Ashley, I'm telling you that I'm not going to answer your question, Alex.
She's
I'm not going to
privileged,
answer a
No,
question.
hold on. I have one more question.
Well,
I'm
just
not going to
ask
answer
the
it.
You
question,
agreed to
and
have
you
me.
can decide if you want to answer or not.
Yeah, you can decide.
I've
and that's
already
fine.
set a
Okay.
boundary and decided
Well,
that
I
I'm
will.
not going to
My
engage with Ashley
boundary.
anymore.
My boundary is that I want one more question in, and that
Let's
is,
just let her ask the question. If you don't
Yeah.
want to answer it, then
it's a respectful question. It's not even rude.
No one's going to force you to answer.
I'm genuinely curious because I know you're denouncing the OnlyFans and all that, but at the time you said that you are now artfully selling pictures of your vagina on your Patreon. I just am curious how that's different.
It's not, and I didn't.
Oh,
Is that enough?
okay. I also have a screen recording of you saying you did. So thank you, Lav. Thank you, Alex, for having me on. Thank you,
This doesn't
Jasmine. Your
exist.
cleavage looks lovely. Everyone have a beautiful night.
All right.
This doesn't exist. I don't know what to
I kind
say.
of want to go back to the so people who are in unique situations, so people of higher socioeconomic status or means, us not being monogamous, that doesn't have any negative impacts on society.
It has less impacts of society because we're such a small population, right? And
so the more,
I'm
the
not.
more
No,
your-
what
the
has
higher
a
your
negative?
socioeconomic status?
Hold
the,
on. What
the
I
more,
have
the
a
more you should not be
Jasmine,
monogamous.
you're
because
fundamentally
you are going to affect society less. Okay, this is great. So people who are more means, they don't have to operate.
No, if
by
you're
this.
going to
If
make
a poor person decides not to be monogamous, they're hurting
God.
society. But if we decide not to be monogamous, we're not. Okay, cool. All right.
Let's
I only
just
have a
like
couple
so
more
you're
people. I don't know if
you're very close.
Let's
You're very
let
close with
Matt
Destiny,
answer.
right? Hold on, Alex.
I'm not
You're close
very-
with Destiny. Whatever, you've talked to Destiny before. You know his talking points. He knows that his life is different because he is wealthy, he is young, he doesn't have children that he has to worry about in the short term, right? So he knows that his life is not going to be the same as like the general population. Even he says, I don't think most people should be polyamorous. I don't think most people should have an open relationship.
Should be either because most people aren't.
This is because part of why he says this.
The people that it works with, the people that it works for should do it, and
let
the
me
people that it
talk.
doesn't work for should do it. But I think it's a very bizarre society to all of a sudden
Let
say
me
the
talk.
most privileged are going to be the least likely to impact society. So we have a less of a moral burden to do what's best.
It's
for
not
society
moral
than
burden. It's that when you are, especially when people look up to you and your life, you're not going to prescribe them something that would lead them astray. So when I am giving a general prescription,
wait, Jasmine, let's let Lav finish because you did ask her a series of questions. So let's Lav, go
when
ahead.
I'm giving a general prescription of society, of which also I did not enjoy having an open relationship. I'm a monogamous girl. I'm like most women in that I enjoy monogamy, right? We tried it because we were like, we can, and we didn't like it. It wasn't for us. So why then would I then prescribe? First of all, if you want to try, anyone who wants to try non-monogamy, try it. I don't care. But if you're looking for something that is going to be better for society, a nuclear family is where you want to fucking focus. So no, I'm not going to prescribe something that I tried to the whole community. I don't even know why Ashley thought that was a fucking own or a talking point. This is retarded.
Nobody's prescribing, like, again, I'm prescribing individual choice and people looking at their circumstances. So there's two questions. What's better for you? And that can be an individual. That can be whatever you're more temperamentally equipped or more temperamentally suited for, or who the kind of person you are. But then when you're talking about society, what should we saying it's good for society? And all of a sudden it becomes, well, if you're like rich and like whatever, then like you're not actually impacting society that much, like negatively.
It's
like,
not that you're impacting society. It's just that
what we should be telling poor underprivileged people is that you guys being non-monogamous is going to be worse for society. I don't understand.
Okay,
Either we're
so
looking at
again,
what's best for you, or
again, you're yapping. You're saying nothing. So let me clarify one more time. Let me clarify one more time, if I may. Rich people are going to have a different set of rules than most of society.
So
they
is
can
it the
act
richer you are?
completely different.
Or is it just what income level? Or like, is it the richer you are, the less of an impact you'll have? Can you just make this pretty clear for me?
It's not about impact. It's about you cannot prescribe things to rich people because rich people play by a different set of rules
Who's rich?
than the rest of society.
What's rich?
Let's say top 10%.
Okay, so the top 10% are not going to negatively impact society, because your whole argument was that monogamy is better for society. Therefore, we ought to be monogamous. That is your argument. But if
the most amount of people ought to be monogamous, yes.
Okay, but if you're in the top 10%, then you do not.
Is that the most amount of people?
No, but the whole point is that I think.
So what are you not understanding about my argument?
describe something different and we guise it under your.
Okay,
going
let me
to
say
have
it for you one more time.
Impact on
We want to
society.
prescribe for the most amount of people.
I have not seen anything to indicate that richer people have better outcomes with polyamory than poorer people. I haven't seen that. Now, you're right. Maybe somebody like Destiny who doesn't get jealous as easily, and he has more of a proclivity towards sexual novelty, and he doesn't have kids, and he's a very unique person. Maybe he's unique, but I don't think that just has to do with income level, because you also, the only thing that's different about you was your income level, because you said that you are someone who leans monogamous, etc. But you still made an individual choice that was best for you, even though you're saying
the individual choice that is best for me, even being as wealthy as we are, is monogamy.
Okay,
that is still true.
That, but
the best outcomes still come from
the best outcomes. The other one? Why did you try the other one? Because
first of all, the best outcomes still come from a monogamous society. So our best outcomes, even for our children, will still come out of monogamy. This is generally true for most of the population. Now, if something were to go wrong, let me fucking finish. If something were to go wrong with rich people, there is more of a blanket or a cushion for if something goes wrong. Like, we have access to abortion, medical doctors, higher education, so that we can offset some of the things that would create negative outcome in our children. But with people who are of average income or even poor, they do not have those safety nets, right? So when we're talking about generally still, the outcomes for my children will be better in a monogamous society. But there are some things that offset it just by virtue of being rich and having access to more. Poor people do not.
We're still going to be a monogamous society if the minority that chooses not to be monogamous chooses not to be monogamous. I haven't seen any data to indicate that if you're middle class and you choose to be polyamorous, especially when the data shows that polyamorous relationships typically, if you're fully polyamorous,
do you need data for everything, or can you logically follow some arguments?
Your statement is absurd, and so if I'm going to believe something,
what statement was absurd? What was the exact statement that was absurd?
The evidence. This is basic.
What was the statement that I said that was absurd?
I would like to see any evidence to indicate.
What was the statement I said that was absurd?
Because yes, anything you do when you're
rich is going to have. What was the statement that I said that was absurd?
The statement you said that was absurd is that somehow, like, the thing you're saying is that if rich people are polyamorous, that is not going to affect their children as much as if middle class people are polyamorous. And I'd like to see why.
Because, okay, I explained this to you. Okay, so we have access to more safety nets that would make more positive outcomes for our children. Things like education. Like, my man is college educated. He owns a business. These are things like money. We have money for private schooling. We have money for tutors. The average person.
Orientation. What does you have to show me that being polyamorous is worse? That 10% of people that lean polyamorous, that is really bad for their kids. I want to see the middle class family that's making, let's say, $60,000-$70,000 a year, and both of them say, hey, you know what, I kind of want to open up our relationship, I want to try to have an open relationship. How that is a bad thing to do for their kids and a bad thing to do for society. But when we do it, it's not.
It's not so much that that's a bad thing to do for society, but that we should socially and positively encourage monogamy because it's what's best for society, regardless of any other influence. Monogamy is what is best for society. We should, in any population, this is what we should positively encourage.
So are you saying for a person who wants to be a person who wants to be polyamorous, who wants to be with multiple people, that is who they are? Are you saying it's better for that person and better for society if those people behave in a monogamous manner?
Yes.
Against what they want? Okay, so this is where we disagree. I think it's better for society. It's not better for society to have
if people do what they want. So you think that pedophiles should be able to have sex with children?
No, because there is a harm happening to the child. You can't compare pedophilia.
There's a harm happening to the child in a non-monogamous society.
Okay. Tell me this. No. You're telling me that it's the same thing. If I have a husband and we both agree, hey, we're going to see other people, in our free time, we still have this child together. We still care about this child's well-being. We're still going to both be there for the child. But on my free time, on my Friday night out, I want to go on a different date, or you can text other women, or you can call. That's the same thing as molesting a child. That's what you're saying?
I can't even.
Yes,
Jazmen. Jazmen. That is exactly what I said. Oh my God, you got me.
You're the one that made
you literally got me. Holy shit, you literally got me.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. I'm good.
Wow.
All right. Good debate. So let's give the girls a chance to plug whatever they want to promote. Let's start off with you, Jazmen.
Yeah, my name's Jazmen. You can go to Jazmen Jaffar, JazmenJaffar.me to see my OnlyFans or my other content. And yeah.
Awesome. Lav.
Let me just say that I cannot believe that Jazmen needs to see data on how unstable relationships with parents lead to poor outcomes in
Monogamous
children.
relationships
I
are
had
very
no
unstable as
idea. I had no idea that that was something that
If you
anyone would
wanna keep
argue
debating,
against.
we can keep debating, but the debate was over. He asked us to
No,
plug
thank
our
you.
socials,
No,
but I will
thank
keep
you.
talking over
No.
you if we need to do that. I'm
Okay.
totally fine with
No,
that.
actually, why don't you plug my socials instead, since you love to yap so much?
Plug your socials and go back to your life.
Oh yeah, I will go to my happy marriage.
I
and
have
my
a very happy
life.
life as well. I hate to tell you this.
We'll see where we both are in 10 years. My name is Leah Jane. I have a podcast called Bloodbath Podcast.
I want to see where we are in 10 years, okay? Because this is
Okay.
no comparison.
I have a
You have a what?
We'll see. I have a podcast, Bloodbath
Great for you.
Podcast. It's on YouTube. My socials are Impish Pixie with 2 E's on Twitch, Twitter, and I think that's it.
Well,
And Cash App if you want to tip me for this. He.
I know. Go ahead.
And also LavLune on Instagram. Thanks for having me.
Where you guys will be in 10 years is on the PWF podcast having another debate.
Hopefully not.
Yeah,
Hopefully I will be having 6 children.
I'm happy to be here in 10 years. And I do want to make a point that I realize I am extremely privileged and I grew up extremely privileged and she didn't. And that's probably going to affect things in the future. But I also think, what?
Who would have thought?
Yeah, I know. So I want to make that clear. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm just not going to be one of those people. Like my parents are rich. I'm pretty rich. I had a really great upbringing. I don't have any mental illnesses. Like I'm doing pretty good. I'm sorry.
So do you think that you can prescribe your exact life to the general population?
No, I don't prescribe my. I'm not you. I don't.
And why not?
One
and wait,
to the
I'm not prescribing my life to the general population.
I'm not prescribing.
Wait, why can't you prescribe your life, Jazmen? Why can't you prescribe your life to the general population?
It has to do with nuance.
Wait, Jazmen. Why can't you prescribe your life?
That is why I wouldn't prescribe the same life to you as I would to me. Okay, I never got on the internet for validation like you did. I don't think that's a good thing. That seems to be why you had negative outcomes because of it. I don't have bipolar disorder. That's going to negatively impact certain things that you do. That's why we shouldn't have the same prescription. You shouldn't do OnlyFans. I should. You don't have to pick one for both of us to agree to do the same thing.
So do you think most women should and can do OnlyFans?
Not most, but some. I don't think that the only thing,
but generally, so when you're generally prescribing,
women shouldn't be.
You agree with everything I say. You agree with everything I say, Jazmen.
To do well in law school, it's not for everybody, but that doesn't mean some women shouldn't be lawyers. Doesn't mean
Jazmen,
some women.
You agree with every. Okay, so you don't think. Okay, answer these questions with a yes or no, please. Would you prescribe most women your life?
Would I prescribe most women in my life to do OnlyFans?
Sure.
Is that the question?
Yeah.
I prescribe like 30%.
Okay, so that's not the general population.
Most, but the whole point of life is I don't know why you're so retarded that you see everything black and white and everyone has to have the same job and everyone needs to be the same person. Everyone has to do the same thing. I think
never said that.
You're
shadowboxing.
I think some women should be
shadowboxing.
I think some women should be X, and I think some women should do OnlyFans. I am one of those women. I'm very sorry that you had the life that you did, where this was not a good option for you because you're crazy. You shouldn't do this if you're a crazy girl. I agree, but I'm not. So that's why this is good for me. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Fire debate. Very fun. We got like literally almost 500 live viewers. Epic. Thanks for coming on, ladies. Appreciate both of you and appreciate the audience for tuning in. This was definitely one of the juicier debates on this channel. All right. Take it easy, y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.